Welcome back. Get comfortable. Pull the blanket up a little higher. Find that position on the couch or the pillow where everything feels exactly right. Because tonight, we are going somewhere you have probably been 1,000 times before, but never quite like this. We are going to Springfield. Not to analyze it, not to stress about it, just to wander through it slowly, the way you wander through a familiar neighborhood late at night when the streets are quiet and the lights are low and every house has a little story glowing behind its curtains. 200 facts, 10 characters, one very long, very comfortable night. Let's begin with the man himself. Section 1. Homer Simpson. 20 facts. There is something deeply comforting about Homer Simpson. He is not trying to impress you. He has never once in his life tried to impress anyone. Now, and honestly, that might be his greatest quality. He is a man who approaches every single day with the same unwavering philosophy. Things will probably be okay, and if they are not, there is almost certainly a donut somewhere nearby that will make them feel okay. Homer J. Simpson. The safety inspector who never inspects anything. The father who somehow always ends up being exactly the father his children needed. The husband who, despite everything, never once stopped loving his wife. Here are 20 things about him that you probably did not know, and a few that you did, presented in the warm, slow voice of someone who just wants you to relax. Fact 1. Homer's middle name is J. This was confirmed across multiple episodes and in various pieces of promotional material connected to the show. But what makes it quietly interesting is that Jay is also the middle name of Homer's voice actor, Dan Castellaneta. Dan J. Castellaneta has been giving Homer his voice since 1987, which means for nearly 4 decades, every stumble, every chuckle, every long, drawn-out doe has come from the same man. Homer's vocal history stretches back to 1987, when he first appeared in short animated sketches on The Tracy Ullman Show, 2 years before The Simpsons had its own series premiere. In those early days, Dan Castellaneta was doing a vocal impression of Walter Matthau, trying to find the right voice for this gruff, working-class father. Over time, the voice softened, got a little more expressive, a little more warm. What started as Matthau gradually became something entirely its own, something unmistakably Homer. Fact 2. The show's creator, Matt Groening, has stated that Homer's IQ is 55-55. For reference, the average human IQ score sits at 100. A score of 70 is generally considered the lower threshold of intellectual disability by most psychological classifications. 55 puts Homer well below that threshold on paper. And yet, and this is the thing that makes Homer fascinating rather than simply sad, he functions. He holds a job. He maintains a marriage. He raises 3 children. He navigates complex social situations, usually badly, but navigates them nonetheless. The show has quietly suggested across many episodes that Homer's low IQ is not entirely the result of genetics or natural development. There is the crayon lodged in his brain from childhood. There is the radiation from his workplace. There are decades of head trauma that would give any neurologist pause. Whatever the cause, the result is a man who is simultaneously one of the most lovable and most unexpectedly resilient characters ever written. Fact 3. Homer has held more than 100 distinct jobs across the show's run. 100? He has been a food critic, a country music manager, a missionary, a police officer, a monorail conductor, an astronaut, a mascot, a mayor's assistant, a sugar baron, a carny, a member of a bowling team that briefly went professional, a paparazzo, a voice actor, a personal trainer, a beer baron, a snowplow operator, a telemarketer, a bodyguard, a film producer, a restaurateur, and that is just the version of the list you could recite before running out of breath. Each of these jobs appears in a separate episode, each time presented as though Homer has simply pivoted naturally into a new career, and each time ending with Homer back in Sector 7G at the Springfield nuclear power plant, sitting in his orange safety chair, doing essentially nothing while the town's electricity somehow continues to flow. The jobs don't stick, but Homer does. He always comes back. Fact 4. Homer's signature exclamation, "Dope," was officially added to the Oxford English Dictionary in the year 2001. The word is listed as an interjection expressing frustration at the realization that things have turned out badly or foolishly. The dictionary citation credits The Simpsons as the origin. In the show's production notes, the word is actually written in scripts as annoyed grunt, meaning for over a decade, Dan Castellaneta was performing a sound that the writers themselves had never formally named. Castellaneta based it on a noise made by James Finlayson, a Scottish actor who appeared in Laurel and Hardy films in the 1930s. Finlayson's version was longer and more drawn out, more theatrical. Castellaneta shortened it, sharpened it, made it percussive. What was once a slow theatrical groan became one of the most instantly recognizable syllables in the history of television. A single grunt. Dictionary official. Fact 5. In the episode where Homer has the crayon removed from his brain, a crayon that had apparently been lodged there since he was a young child, his IQ jumps dramatically. The show depicts him becoming more articulate, more observant, more sensitive to the world around him. Then he writes a thoughtful and scientifically sound report about the dangers of the Springfield nuclear power plant. He connects more deeply with Lisa. He reads books. He has conversations that go beyond the superficial. And then, and this is the part that lingers, he has the crayon put back in, not because someone forced him, because he chose it. Because being intelligent in Springfield, being aware of everything wrong with his job and his town and the systems pressing down on his life was more painful than the fog. Homer chose comfort over clarity. It is a very human thing to do. It is also, when you sit with it for a moment, a genuinely heartbreaking one. Fact 6. Homer's father is Abraham Abe Simpson, and Homer's relationship with him is one of the quietly consistent, emotional threads running through the entire series. But Homer Bart does not have a warm relationship with Abe. He is frequently embarrassed by him, dismissive of him, inattentive to him. He once admitted openly that he does not think about Abe at all when they are not in the same room together. And yet, in the episodes where the show slows down and lets them actually sit with each other, there is something tender there. Two men who do not know how to say they love each other, circling around it for decades. Abe himself was not a great father. He was distant, preoccupied, sometimes actively unkind to a young Homer in ways the show hints at but rarely examines directly. The damage passed down. Homer flinches away from emotional intimacy in the same way Abe did, with the important difference that Homer's flinching usually ends in a hug. Eventually. Fact 7. Homer's favorite food is donuts, which is both the most obvious fact about him and also strangely worth pausing on. The donut is a specific thing, and it is not just junk food broadly. It is the donut specifically. Pink frosted, sprinkled. The kind that exists in the glowing case at a gas station at 2 a.m. when you are making questionable choices. Homer's relationship with donuts has been depicted as something approaching a spiritual bond. In one famous Halloween episode, Homer makes a deal with the devil, played by Flanders, trading his soul for a single donut. He eats all but the last bite and believes he has found a loophole, keeping his soul by technically not finishing the donut. He then spends the night eating that final bite in his sleep. Homer's soul is worth exactly one donut, and the truly strange thing is that within the logic of Homer Simpson, that feels completely correct. Fact 8. Homer went to space. In the 6th season episode, Deep Space Homer, he is selected by NASA for a mission after the agency determines that ratings for space launches have fallen and they need an average, relatable person to boost public interest. Homer qualifies as average, essentially by accident, scoring high enough on a test because he randomly guesses correctly on several questions. He goes to space, nearly destroys the shuttle with a potato chip cracker, and saves the mission by using an inanimate rod, the same kind of safety rod he ignores daily at the plant, to fix the airlock. The episode aired in 1994. Buzz Aldrin, the actual astronaut who walked on the actual moon, guest starred as himself. He and Homer bond over being underappreciated by the public. It is one of the stranger friendships the show has ever portrayed, and also one of the most strangely genuine. Fact 9. Homer has a half-brother named Herbert Powell, voiced by Danny DeVito. Herb is everything Homer might have been under different circumstances. He is successful, entrepreneurial, sharp, and the founder of a major car manufacturing company. He and Homer share a biological father in Abe Simpson. but Herb was given up for adoption as an infant and raised separately. When they meet as adults, Herb is immediately and genuinely excited to have a brother. He gives Homer money. He brings him into his company. He listens to Homer's ideas about what regular people want in a car. Homer proceeds, through pure enthusiasm and poor judgment, to accidentally bankrupt the entire company. Herb loses everything. Now he ends up poor and resentful. And then, in a later episode, they reconnect again when Herb invents a baby translator device using Maggie as his test subject. Herb becomes rich again. They are brothers again. The show keeps giving this relationship another chance, which is very on brand for a show about a family that keeps getting things wrong and keeps trying anyway. Fact 10. Homer met Marge Bouvier in high school. Their first real interaction occurred when they were both assigned to detention. Homer for being disruptive, Marge for burning her bra as a feminist protest that she immediately regretted because it hurt. They bonded during that detention session. Homer fell completely, irreversibly in love with Marge on the spot. He spent the rest of high school trying to impress her, with limited success. And he eventually got her to go to the prom with him under slightly dubious circumstances. She was briefly interested in another boy, a more sophisticated student, who turned out to be significantly less decent than he appeared. Homer, despite his flaws, was always decent. And Marge, who understood people more clearly than anyone ever gave her credit for, saw that. Their love story is not a complicated one. It is a simple one, which makes it durable. Fact 11. Homer's hair consists of exactly 2 strands. This is one of those visual details that becomes stranger the longer you look at it. 2 strands of hair, curved slightly, sitting on top of a head that is otherwise completely bald. This design choice by Matt Groening was not an artistic accident. It was a deliberate simplification for ease of animation. But within the show's logic, it has been treated as a real feature of Homer's appearance, one that other characters sometimes comment on. There is also the matter of Homer's ear, which is drawn in a way that incorporates what is clearly supposed to be a hair follicle, meaning Homer does technically have some hair he has just elected not to do anything with it. 2 strands on top, 1 follicle on the ear. That is the complete inventory of Homer Simpson's hair. Fact 12. Homer has been to every continent. He has traveled internationally in more episodes than most real people travel internationally in lifetimes. He has been to Australia, Brazil, Japan, England, France, Germany, Italy, Cuba, China, and many others. He has also, notably, been to Antarctica, making him one of the few cartoon characters to have technically completed a full continental sweep. What is interesting about Homer's travel episodes is that they follow a consistent rhythm. Homer arrives somewhere culturally distinct from Springfield. Homer behaves with cheerful obliviousness toward that culture. Something goes wrong. Homer somehow resolves it or escapes it. Homer returns to Springfield having learned nothing and forgotten everything by the next episode. It is a formula, yes, but it is a formula that has produced some of the show's most genuinely funny half hours, and it reflects something real about Homer, his total imperviousness to the world, reshaping him. Fact 13. Homer's bowling team, the Pin Pals, is one of the small, consistent pleasures of the show's background mythology. Homer bowls. He is not particularly good at it, but he is enthusiastic about it, which in Homer's world is the more important quality, as the team has appeared across multiple episodes and has had various rosters. Mr. Burns once joined the team and, despite being physically incapable of throwing a regulation bowling ball with any meaningful force, managed to contribute to a victory through sheer luck. Homer's relationship with bowling is one of the most grounded pleasures in his life, a thing that is not about career advancement or family drama or town-level crisis. Just a ball, some pins, and a beer. There is something genuinely peaceful about how happy bowling makes Homer, and that peacefulness is part of why the bowling alley feels like one of the most restful locations in all of Springfield. Fact 14. Homer once genuinely tried to better himself intellectually. He enrolled in a college course after Burns required all plant employees to have college degrees. Yet he attended Springfield University badly. He partied. He failed repeatedly. He bonded with a group of college students who treated him with affection, roughly equivalent to a strange but beloved pet. In the end, Homer did not graduate. He did not get the degree. The crisis with Burns was resolved through other means, but the episode is notable because of how sincerely Homer wanted to succeed academically. He was not coasting. He was genuinely trying and genuinely failing, and his genuine effort made the failing tender rather than comic. Homer wants to be good at things. He just often lacks the scaffolding to get there. Fact 15. The show has depicted Homer eating an entire stick of butter on its own, in one sitting while watching television, as though this were a completely normal snack. Yet he has also eaten a sandwich the size of a small child, an entire wheel of cheese, a glass of pure mayonnaise, and a hamburger that required both hands and a certain spiritual commitment to consume. Homer's eating is not just a background gag. It is a fully realized character trait that speaks to his relationship with comfort, pleasure, and the immediate satisfaction of physical desire. Homer does not delay gratification. Homer barely acknowledges that delayed gratification is a concept. When Homer wants something, he wants it now, and usually he gets it, and usually it makes him briefly and perfectly happy. Fact 16. Homer has a genuine and deep love of beer. His brand of choice is Duff, Springfield's premier domestic lager, which is manufactured in a brewery that the show once revealed operates under deeply questionable sanitary conditions. Homer either does not know this or does not care, and either way, his loyalty to Duff is unwavering. He drinks it at Moe's Tavern, which is where he goes when the world gets to be too much, which, for Homer, is fairly frequently. Moe's Tavern is less a bar than it is an emotional rest stop, a place where Homer can exhale and be around people who know him without requiring anything from him. Moe himself, gruff and frequently unkind, is genuinely fond of Homer, in the way that people who don't know how to express affection are fond of the people they're most fond of. Fact 17. Homer has had numerous near-death experiences and has died in various non-canon Halloween episodes more times than a careful accountant could track. In the annual Treehouse of Horror specials, Homer has been killed by aliens, murdered by his own products, devoured by supernatural forces, and dispatched in ways that range from quick to elaborately absurd. In the regular canon of the show, Homer has survived falls, explosions, animal attacks, and quantities of food that should not be survivable. His resilience is not treated with any particular reverence. It is simply a background fact of his existence, like gravity or tax season. Homer will be fine. Homer is always fine. This is comforting in a way that is hard to fully articulate, but easy to feel. Fact 18. Homer's relationship with his neighbor Ned Flanders is one of the most complex, non-romantic relationships in the show. On the surface, Homer treats Ned with casual contempt, borrowing tools without returning them, taking advantage of Ned's generosity with cheerful thoughtlessness, and frequently expressing irritation at Ned's relentless positivity. But across many episodes, the show reveals that Homer does not actually dislike Ned. He simply cannot process Ned. Ned represents a version of responsibility and kindness that Homer aspires to, but has never found the pathway toward. There is an episode where Homer admits, in a moment of genuine vulnerability, that Ned is everything he wishes he could be. He immediately covers it up, but the show let you see it, which is all it needed to do. Fact 19. Homer once wrote and recorded a barbershop quartet song that became a genuine hit. The group was called the B Sharps, and their song Baby on Board, a quiet, simple tune about having an infant in a car, swept Springfield and eventually the nation. They went on tour. They recorded an album. They appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. They briefly became famous. And then they fell apart, the way bands always fall apart, through a combination of creative differences, personal issues, and the introduction of a conceptually ambitious artistic direction that alienated their core audience. The B Sharps reunited briefly on a rooftop years later, performing a concert for an audience of one passerby. The passerby was George Harrison. Harrison listened, nodded appreciatively, and said it was good. Homer was deeply moved. It is one of the smaller, quieter triumphs the show has ever given him. Fact 20. At the end of many episodes, Homer does something remarkable and consistent. He hugs his family. Not dramatically, not as the culmination of a grand arc. Just a hug on the couch, now in the living room, with the television still on and the dog probably nearby. Homer Simpson is a man who has been described as having an IQ of 55, who has lost multiple jobs and failed multiple classes, and broken multiple objects and upset multiple people and caused multiple minor civic disasters. And at the end of the day, he sits on the couch with the people he loves, and he holds them, and the show lets that be enough. It is a generous thing for a show to offer. It is also, quietly, the truest thing about Homer. All the chaos, all the stumbling, all the dough and the donuts, it has always been in service of getting back to that couch, back to that family, back to that hug. If you are still with me, drop a comment below with your time and location. And it doesn't matter if it's 2 a.m. in a quiet bedroom or a Tuesday afternoon on a lunch break. Tell me where you are, and if this is helping you unwind, subscribe. There are 9 more sections coming, 200 facts in total, and we are going to move through all of them slowly. No rush. Springfield is patient. Let's keep going. Section 2. Marge Simpson. 20 facts. Marge Simpson is the most underestimated person in Springfield. She is often described, even by the show itself, in terms of what she does for other people. She is Homer's wife. She is Bart and Lisa and Maggie's mother. She is the one who holds things together. And while all of that is true, it is also a version of Marge that sits on the surface, the Marge who exists in relation to everyone else. The deeper Marge, the one the show occasionally pulls into focus with remarkable clarity, is a woman with a rich interior life, genuine creative talent, strong personal convictions, and a complicated relationship with the life she chose. She is content, mostly, but she is also, sometimes, something more interesting than content. She is a person who made a choice and lives with it and has never quite stopped wondering about the roads she didn't take. Here are 20 things about Marge that deserve to be said slowly and quietly in the dark. Fact. 21. Marge's full name is Marjorie Jacqueline Simpson, née Bouvier. She was raised in a middle-class household by her parents, Jacqueline and Clancy Bouvier. Her father was a former airline pilot who became a flight attendant. Her mother was a woman of refined tastes and frequent disappointment. A woman who had expected a certain kind of life and settled, not unhappily but not effortlessly, for the one she got. Marge absorbed some of this quality. She has standards. She maintains those standards with a quiet persistence that is sometimes mistaken for passivity because Marge does not typically fight loudly. She fights steadily, which is a different kind of fighting and often more effective. Fact 22. Marge's iconic blue hair has a very specific origin in the show's storytelling. When she was younger, Marge's hair was naturally a dark reddish-brown. She began dyeing it blue, a blue that she has maintained with apparent consistency and commitment for her entire adult life. But the exact shade of blue is distinctive enough that it has become the most recognizable feature of her appearance. Her hair is styled straight up, a tower of blue that defies physics and never once appears to require additional product or maintenance. How it stays up, why it stays up, and what internal structural logic supports its architecture have never been explained. The show seems to take the position that some things are simply true and need not be justified. Marge's hair is one of them. Fact 23. Before she settled into domestic life on Evergreen Terrace, Marge demonstrated real artistic talent. In one of the show's most beloved episodes, she paints an oil portrait of Mr. Burns that is not only technically accomplished, but emotionally perceptive. It captures something true and slightly unsettling about Burns that professional portraits never managed. Burns is so disturbed by it that he initially rejects it, unable to face the honesty of his own image. The painting eventually gets the recognition it deserves, though not before a series of complications that involve forgery, theft, and the revelation that the art world is not always as discerning as it presents itself. Marge's artistic talent is real. The show established it clearly and then largely left it in the background, which is itself a small, quiet commentary on what happens to women's creative gifts when domestic life expands to fill all available space. Fact 24. Marge briefly worked at the Springfield nuclear power plant herself. Now, this is a detail that tends to get overlooked in the broader sweep of the show, but it is worth pausing on. Marge entered an environment with 342 documented safety violations, radioactive materials used casually as paperweights, and luminous rodents in the walls. And she worked there. She would have been exposed to the same conditions Homer has been exposed to for decades. The show does not draw a direct line between Marge's time at the plant and any physical effects, but the implication hangs there quietly in the background of the radiation theory, waiting to be noticed. Fact 25. Marge has a gambling addiction. This was revealed in a Season 5 episode and handled with a degree of care and specificity that distinguished it from a typical single-episode problem. Marge discovers the casino that opens in Springfield and finds in it a kind of electrical engagement she has not felt in a long time. She becomes lost in it, not in a melodramatic way, but in the slow, drifting way that actual addictions tend to work. She misses family events. She loses track of time. She sits at the slot machine in a state of focused calm that the show depicts as genuinely pleasurable for her, which is what makes it feel real rather than preachy. The episode does not resolve the addiction with a single revelation scene. It ends with Marge acknowledging the problem and beginning, quietly, to address it. That is not a cure. It is a beginning. The show knew the difference. Fact 26. Marge once studied to become a police officer and briefly served on the Springfield police force. She was good at it. She was perhaps better at it than Chief Wiggum, which is not an enormously high bar, but she brought genuine competence and thoughtfulness to the role in a way that the Springfield PD was not accustomed to experiencing. She eventually resigned from the force due to complications involving Homer, which is a sentence that could describe a significant number of events in Marge's life. But during her time as an officer, she demonstrated once again something the show returns to regularly. Marge is capable of more than her domestic role requires of her. The show lets her be good at things and then brings her home again, which is both a reflection of her choices and a quiet frustration the show never fully resolves. Fact 27. Marge has a low, quiet humming sound she makes when she is worried or disapproving. Now, it is not quite a word and not quite a sigh. It is something between the two, a sustained throat sound that functions as her most honest form of emotional expression. The show's writing staff refers to it as the Marge noise, and Julie Kavner, who voices Marge, has given it a consistency and a specificity that makes it recognizable after a single syllable. When you hear it, you know Marge is concerned. You know she disagrees. You know she is holding something back out of love or politeness or both. The Marge noise is the sound of a woman who knows when to speak and has decided this is not that moment. Fact 28. Julie Kavner, the actress who voices Marge, has been doing so since the Tracy Ullman Show shorts in 1987. She has never been replaced or recast. This is remarkable even by the standard of the show's extraordinary cast stability. Kavner's voice is one of the most distinctive in television history, slightly raspy, warm, carrying a quality of careful thoughtfulness that informs everything Marge says. In interviews, Kavner has described the relationship between herself and Marge as deeply personal and somewhat private. She is protective of the character in a way that feels genuine rather than professional. She does not frequently discuss Marge in promotional contexts. She simply voices her, every season, every episode, with the same attentive consistency. Kavner has also noted that performing Marge's most emotional scenes has physical effects on her own throat and voice, which lends an interesting physicality to the sentimental moments the show sometimes gives its most stable character. Fact 29. Marge's sisters, Patty and Selma Bouvier, that are two of the show's most reliably interesting supporting characters. They both smoke constantly. They both speak in the same low, flat monotone. They both despise Homer with a clarity and intensity that has never wavered across 36 years. And they are both, when the show gives them a moment, more complicated than their function as comic foils suggests. Patty is a lesbian, hana. This was confirmed in a season 16 episode, who had kept this part of herself private for years. Selma has been married multiple times and has a genuine desire for connection and family that the show treats with more tenderness than her exterior might suggest. The Bouvier sisters are part of the texture of Marge's life in a way that feels true, the family members who drive you gently insane and whom you would also do anything for. Fact 30. Now, Marge once briefly had a romantic interest in a man who was not Homer. This storyline has appeared across a few episodes in different forms, and each time the show handles it with a delicacy that avoids both judgment and easy resolution. Marge is a faithful wife. She loves Homer, but she is also a human woman with a full interior life, and the show has never pretended that Homer is the easiest person to be married to. The near affairs, the flirtations, the moments where Marge looks at someone who is attentive and stable and thinks something she does not act on, these moments are the show being honest. Marriage is a long thing. It contains a lot of weather. Marge has navigated all of it, and the fact that she keeps choosing Homer again and again gives that choice weight. Fact 31. Marge is an excellent cook. But this is a fact about her domestic life that the show treats as incidental but is worth acknowledging as a genuine skill. Her cooking is described by the family as wonderful, and Homer's emotional responses to Marge's food suggest us she is producing something genuinely nourishing, not just in caloric terms, but in the warmer sense. Meals at the Simpson house are chaotic and loud and frequently interrupted, but they happen regularly because Marge makes them happen. There is something to be said for the person who keeps feeding everyone despite everything. It is an uncelebrated kind of generosity, and Marge does it without stopping. Fact 32. Marge was briefly a real estate agent. She discovered she had a natural talent for it, an ability to see potential in spaces, to understand what people needed in a home, to communicate clearly and build trust. She was genuinely good at it. And then Springfield's real estate market, being Springfield's real estate market, complicated things. But the episode is another entry in the quiet catalog of Marge's competencies. A list of things she is good at that she mostly encounters by accident and then does not return to. Not because she lacks the ability, but because the circumstances of her life keep reorganizing around other priorities. Fact 33. Marge is a deeply conscientious person in a way that sometimes costs her. She worries, persistently, elaborately, with a range and specificity that the show has occasionally used to generate plots, but more often uses simply as texture, as the emotional backdrop against which her patience becomes understandable. Marge worries about Bart's future, not about Lisa's happiness, about Maggie's silence, about Homer's health, about the state of the neighborhood, about whether the family is eating enough vegetables, about whether she herself is enough. The worrying is not presented as a flaw. It is presented as love in its most vigilant form. Fact 34. In the episode Homer's Night Out, Marge discovers a photo of Homer dancing with an exotic dancer at a bachelor party. She is hurt and angry and temporarily asks Homer to leave. What is interesting about this storyline is that Marge's hurt is not melodramatic. It is specific and human and rooted in something real. She is not performing outrage, she is genuinely wounded. And the resolution does not come through Homer making a grand gesture. It comes through him understanding, with Marge's help, that the dancer is a person and not a prop, and demonstrating that understanding in front of their son. The resolution is about dignity. Marge teaching Homer about dignity. This is a thing she does, gently and without ceremony, throughout the entire run of the show. Fact 35. Marge owns and has read an enormous number of books about psychology and self-improvement. This is a small recurring visual detail. Bookshelves in the Simpson home occasionally visible in background shots, filled with titles that suggest Marge has spent a considerable amount of time trying to understand human behavior, including her own. She is a reader. She is a thinker. She simply does her reading and thinking in a house full of very loud people who rarely stop moving long enough to notice. Fact 36. Marge has been the show's most consistent moral voice. Not in a preachy way, but yeah. The show has resisted making Marge into a lesson delivery mechanism and has instead let her embody a consistent value system through the accumulation of choices. She is honest, even when honesty is difficult. She is kind, genuinely, not performatively. She believes in people's capacity to improve, which in a town like Springfield requires a level of optimism that could also be read as heroism. And when her own behavior falls short of her values, when she gambles too much, or fibs for convenience, or lets her frustrations spill sideways into passive cruelty, the show does not excuse it. It lets Marge see it and reckon with it. She holds herself to a standard. That is not a minor thing. Fact 37. Marge's hair, at its full height, is said to stand approximately 2 feet above her head. Now, the exact number varies depending on who is estimating and in what episode, but the visual impression it creates, a towering blue structure above a figure of otherwise normal height, has been one of the show's most immediately recognizable images since 1989. In one episode, her hair was revealed to conceal a shotgun. This was treated as a surprise twist, which raises questions about what else may be up there that the show has never gotten around to revealing. Fact 38. Marge once worked as a pretzel vendor. Homer helped in his way. It was a legitimate business venture that encountered the standard Springfield obstacles, organized crime involvement from Fat Tony's operation, which is more or less inevitable when any small business gains traction in Springfield. What is notable about this episode is not the pretzel plot, but Marge's investment in it. Her genuine enthusiasm for building something that was hers, that she had created, and was operating with her own effort and skill. The show kept letting Marge try things. That is a generous thing for a show to do. Fact 39. The relationship between Marge and Bart is one of the show's quietest emotional threads. They are not naturally simpatico. Marge's orderly, conscientious personality and Bart's chaotic, impulsive one occupy fundamentally different frequencies. But Marge loves Bart with a completeness that does not require him to be different. She shows up for him, consistently. She advocates for him against teachers and principals in a town that has largely categorized him as a problem. She believes he is more than the category. Now, she is probably right. And Bart, who does not say tender things out loud, shows his love for Marge in the things he does not say. In the moments where he could make her life harder and chooses, quietly, not to. Fact 40. In a famous future set episode, an adult Bart calls Marge from prison. He is briefly incarcerated in the imagined future timeline, and the conversation between them is one of the show's most affecting moments. No crisis, no plot escalation, just a son calling his mother because he wanted to hear her voice. The future Bart is still somewhat adrift, still figuring out his life, still carrying the marks of a childhood that was vivid and chaotic and full of everything except straight lines. But he calls. And Marge answers the way she always answers, the way she will always answer. That has always been Marge's great, unflashy gift, she answers. Section 3, Bart Simpson. 20 facts. Bartholomew Jojo Simpson. If Homer is the show's emotional anchor and Marge is its conscience, Bart is its engine. The source of kinetic energy that keeps Springfield in a state of permanent low-level turbulence. He is 10 years old. He has been 10 years old for 36 years. And in that time, without aging a single day, he has become one of the most culturally significant characters in the history of American animation. A boy whose picture appeared on t-shirts and lunchboxes and the sides of buses, whose catchphrases entered the vocabulary of a generation, whose face is recognizable in countries where The Simpsons does not even regularly air. But Bart Simpson is more interesting than his cultural image suggests. But beneath the skateboard and the slingshot and the easy smirk, there is a boy of real emotional complexity. A boy who has been misread by almost everyone around him, who contains more than he shows, and who will, the show keeps suggesting, eventually figure himself out. He just hasn't yet. He's 10. Fact 41. Bart's name was conceived by Matt Groening as an anagram of brat, which is a pleasingly direct piece of naming philosophy. Groening has discussed the name in interviews, noting that he wanted a name that sounded both casual and slightly off. A name that didn't feel like it had been chosen to signal respectability. Bartholomew achieved this through its contrast with the nickname Bart, formal full name, informal daily name, the gap between them suggesting a family that had aspirations they expressed in naming and then didn't quite follow through on otherwise. Homer and Marge named their son Bartholomew and then called him Bart. That is, in miniature, the story of a lot of parents. Fact 42. Bart's voice has been performed by Nancy Cartwright since the show's inception. And Nancy Cartwright is a woman. She has voiced Bart for nearly 4 decades, and the choice of a female voice actor for a young male character is not unusual in animation. This is a common practice, partly because adult male actors have difficulty sustaining the particular pitch and energy of a child's voice, and partly because female voice actors like Cartwright can access a quality of youthful exuberance that male adult voices often cannot. Cartwright has described Bart as the role of a lifetime. She went to the audition intending to voice Lisa, read for Bart instead, and knew immediately that he was her character. She has never wavered. Fact 43. One of the show's earliest and most affecting episodes, Bart the General, establishes something important about Bart that the show returns to many times. He protects his sister. When bullies target Lisa, Bart does not hesitate. He plans. He organizes. He leads a campaign against Nelson and the school's bullying culture that is genuinely effective. The episode reveals that underneath Bart's antagonistic relationship with Lisa, the teasing, the pranks, the reflexive sibling cruelty, there is a protectiveness that is absolute. Mess with Bart all you want. Mess with Lisa and you will discover that Bart Simpson is strategic, determined and surprisingly fearless when someone he loves is threatened. He would just prefer you not tell anyone he has these qualities. Fact 44. Bart has a spray-painted signature that he uses when tagging locations around Springfield. He is a prolific graffiti artist, or, depending on your perspective, vandal, who has left his mark on walls, buildings, and at least one prominent public monument. His tagging style is broad, confident, and legible, which suggests more artistic intention than pure destruction. There have been episodes where Bart's visual creativity is acknowledged and treated as a genuine talent, a talent that the school system has consistently failed to channel because it does not fit the format that classrooms require. Bart can draw. Bart has a strong visual sensibility. Thus, these things have never quite received the institutional recognition that Lisa's more conventionally academic gifts have received, which is both realistic and quietly unfair. Fact 45. Bart has a pet elephant. This actually happened. In a Season 6 episode, a radio station runs a contest offering listeners a choice between pie and an elephant. Everyone assumes the elephant is a joke option, an impossible prize designed to make the cash seem more reasonable. Bart chooses the elephant. His name is Stampy. Stampy is real, enormous, and immediately begins causing significant problems for a family that lives in a standard suburban house on a standard suburban street. The episode is about the gap between wanting something and living with the consequences of getting it. Stampy is eventually donated to an animal refuge, and Bart says goodbye with a genuine sadness that does not resolve cleanly. Wanting things and losing them. Bart is 10. He is already learning. Fact 46. One of the most discussed episodes in the show's history is Bart Gets an F, the first episode of Season 2. Bart faces the prospect of being held back a year, of failing 4th grade and having to repeat it while all of his friends advance. He studies. Genuinely, effortfully, in a way we have not seen from him before. He prays. He makes a deal with God. If it snows on the day of his test and he gets a snow day, he will study even harder. It snows. He studies. He takes the test. He gets a D-, 1 point above failing. And Bart cries. He cries in front of his teacher, Mrs. Krabappel, who has seen everything in 20-plus years of teaching and is not typically moved by student performance. She is moved by this. She gives him the extra point for demonstrating genuine knowledge at the end. And Bart fails up, barely, by the smallest margin, through genuine effort. The episode is about how hard it is for some people to demonstrate what they know, and how much it costs them to try. Fact 47. Bart's best friend is Milhouse Van Houten, a relationship that is one of the show's most faithfully maintained through the seasons. Milhouse is anxious, loyal, frequently unfortunate, and devoted to Bart in a way that the show treats with real warmth. He follows Bart into most of his schemes. He suffers most of the consequences. He occasionally, quietly, stands up for himself in ways that surprise everyone, including Milhouse. Their friendship is asymmetric in the way many childhood best friendships are. One person leading, one person following, both of them needing each other in ways that are not equal but are genuine. Milhouse has been in love with Lisa for the entire run of the show. This is treated as comic, but there is something persistent and earnest about it that makes it feel less like a gag and more like a sincere, if deeply unlikely, thing. Fact 48. Bart has had numerous meaningful relationships with adult figures in Springfield who saw something in him that the school system missed. One of the most significant is his relationship with Sideshow Bob, complex, adversarial, but not without its strange moments of genuine engagement between two people who, under different circumstances, might have respected each other. But perhaps more interesting is Bart's relationship with his teachers and principals over the years. The moments where adults who start as antagonists become, briefly and genuinely, something closer to mentors. The show keeps suggesting that Bart responds well to being taken seriously. He just rarely is. Fact 49. Bart once became a minor celebrity in France after a viral moment, or the period equivalent of a viral moment, given the era. He has also been briefly famous within Springfield on multiple occasions, each time finding that fame is less comfortable and more complicated than it looks from the outside, and each time retreating from it. Bart does not want to be famous. He wants to be good at things, which is different. He wants to be respected by the specific people around him, which is different still. The large, undifferentiated approval of strangers has never held much appeal for a boy who is primarily interested in the texture of his immediate world. Fact 50. In a rarely discussed but significant episode, Bart befriends a retired veteran and helps him reconnect with family members he had lost touch with. The episode reveals a quality that the show keeps in Bart's character, but does not often foreground: his genuine capacity for empathy and care toward people outside his immediate circle. Bart can be cruel to people he knows. He is rarely cruel to strangers. He has a soft spot for the vulnerable, the overlooked, the misunderstood, categories he himself has occupied more than he would admit. When Bart chooses to be kind, the show makes clear it comes from somewhere real. Fact 51. Bart's academic performance is legendarily poor. That he is consistently near the bottom of his class, consistently in trouble with teachers, and consistently receiving assessments that suggest a future of limited prospects. But the show has also seeded, across many episodes, strong evidence that Bart's intelligence is real and specific. He has demonstrated strategic thinking, rapid situation assessment, social intelligence, and mechanical aptitude. He learns quickly when he is engaged. He retains information he finds interesting with a precision that would serve him well in a different context. The gap between Bart's potential and his academic performance is not a gap in ability. It is a gap in engagement, a mismatch between what he is capable of and what the institution asks of him. This is not unusual. It is, in fact, very common. The show has been making this point quietly for 36 years. Fact 52. Bart was originally conceived by Matt Groening as the main character of the show. The early vision placed Bart at the center of the family dynamic, with Homer as a secondary figure. As the show developed and Dan Castellaneta's Homer grew in richness and depth, the center of gravity shifted. But the show's origins as a Bart-centric story are visible in the early seasons, where his perspective and his adventures organize most of the plots. Homer gradually took over the center without any formal decision being made. Homer simply kept being more interesting, richer, more capacious as a character. Bart remained vital. He just became, over time, one of 5 equally important people rather than the one person the story was about. Fact 53. While Bart has a prank-calling tradition with Moe's Tavern that is one of the show's most reliable running gags. He calls the bar, asks Moe to page a fictional customer with a name that sounds like an insult when spoken aloud, and Moe falls for it with a consistency that speaks to either exceptional trust or exceptional inattention. The names are creative: Amanda Hug and Kiss, Seymour Butts, Alcoholic, Hugh Jass, and delivered with a serious deadpan that Bart has clearly practiced. In one episode, Moe actually locates the customer whose name Bart has requested. The customer, Hugh Jass, turns out to be a real person, a pleasant man who takes the joke in excellent stride. It is one of the show's small, perfect moments, the prank that accidentally lands on someone it cannot hurt. Fact 54. Bart has a complicated relationship with religion, but he attends church because Marge requires it, participates minimally, and has been caught sleeping, doodling, and passing notes during services more times than anyone has counted. But in episodes where faith becomes personally relevant to him, when he is facing something that frightens him, when he needs something desperately enough to ask for it. Bart prays. He does it privately, without witnesses, in a way that suggests he is genuinely uncertain whether it works but is not willing to dismiss it entirely. The show treats this as honest, a boy who doesn't believe in the institution but retains some remnant of the underlying impulse. Fact 55. One of the show's most tender recurring images is Bart riding his skateboard through Springfield alone, not going anywhere particular, just moving through the town at dusk or on a weekend morning, at the streets quiet and the city laid out around him. In these moments, the show removes the comedy and the crisis and presents simply a boy in his town, at ease in the physical space around him, capable of a kind of contentment that does not require anything from anyone. Bart loves Springfield. He would not put it that way. But he knows every street and shortcut and hiding place in it, which is a kind of love expressed through attention. Fact 56. In a Season 4 episode, Bart discovers that a local retired general has been stealing valor, claiming credit for heroic actions in World War II that he did not actually perform. Bart exposes him. The town is initially angry at Bart for disrupting their comfortable narrative about a local hero. Now, the episode is about the cost of telling the truth in a community that has built a comfortable story around a lie. Bart pays that cost and is not thanked for it. He does it anyway. This is one of those moments where the show reaches past comedy into something more earnest. A suggestion that underneath all the pranks and chaos, Bart Simpson has a genuine moral core. He just delivers it in inconvenient packaging. Fact 57. Bart once sincerely apologized to Lisa. Genuinely, without being asked, without it being required by any external consequence, without it being the punchline or the setup for anything. He just apologized. The moment is small and brief, and the show moves on from it quickly. But it exists, and it matters, because it demonstrates something that the show periodically reminds us of. Bart knows when he has gone too far. Not he knows when he has hurt someone he loves. He does not always act on that knowledge, but he has it. The knowledge is there. Fact 58. Bart's full given name, Bartholomew Jojo Simpson, was revealed as a small piece of canonical world-building that became disproportionately beloved. Jojo is the sort of middle name that suggests a brief moment of whimsy in a naming convention that otherwise reached for something traditionally dignified. Homer and Marge named their eldest son Bartholomew, which is solid and somewhat grand, and then inserted Jojo in the middle like a small private joke. Where Jojo came from has never been explained. Like many of the small details in Springfield, it simply is. Fact 59. That in the future set episode, Bart to the Future, an adult Bart is depicted as a failed musician who has never quite found his footing in life, bouncing between casual jobs and crash pads, dependent on Lisa's largesse while she serves as President of the United States. The episode is not mean about this future Bart. It treats him with a kind of affectionate resignation, a recognition that some people take longer to find themselves than others, and that longer sometimes means still working on it at 40. The adult Bart is not unhappy. He is unmoored. There is a difference, and the show is careful with it. Fact 60. The chalkboard gag that opens every episode, Bart writing the same sentence over and over as punishment, is one of the show's longest-running structural elements. Each episode's gag is original and specific to that episode, functioning as a kind of secondary joke before the main credits have even finished. The sentences have ranged from the broadly topical to the deeply absurd to the occasionally sincere. Writing them episode after episode for 36 years has produced a library of Bart's voice that is in many ways more candid than anything he says on screen. Because the chalkboard is where he is alone, and alone is often when people are most themselves. Section 4. Lisa Simpson. 20 facts. Lisa Marie Simpson is 8 years old. She has been 8 years old for 36 years, and in that time, she has been the show's most earnest voice, its most persistent idealist, its most reliably broken heart. She plays the saxophone with genuine passion. She reads books the adults around her have not read. She advocates for causes that Springfield largely ignores. She is the smartest person in the room in nearly every room she enters. and she lives in a world that does not consistently reward that quality. She is lonely. She is brave. She is 8 years old, and she already understands more about injustice and hypocrisy than most adults who have had 6 more decades to notice it. Lisa Simpson is the question the show keeps asking itself, and the show, generously, never claims to have the full answer. Fact 61. Lisa's saxophone playing was a late addition to her character. In the earliest episodes and the Tracy Ullman Show shorts, Lisa did not have an instrument. The saxophone was added as the show developed, partly as a visual and partly as an expression of character. The saxophone being an instrument associated with emotional expressiveness, improvisational intelligence, and a certain blue-toned introspection that suited Lisa exactly. Her skill level is depicted as genuinely accomplished, beyond what most 8-year-olds achieve. In one episode, she meets Bleeding Gums Murphy, a jazz musician who becomes a mentor, and who recognizes in her a real musical mind. His death later in the series is one of the show's most understated and effective moments of genuine grief. Fact 62. Lisa's IQ has been stated at various points in the show at various numbers, all of them high. The most commonly cited figure is 159, which places her in the upper range of genius level by most psychological scales. What the show does with this number is interesting. It does not treat genius as an advantage in Springfield. Lisa's intelligence creates problems. It alienates her from peers who don't know how to interact with someone who processes the world so differently. It creates friction with teachers who feel challenged by her. It isolates her within her own family, where she often speaks to a wavelength that Homer and Bart are simply not tuned to receive. Lisa's IQ is her defining trait and her defining difficulty. Fact 63. Lisa is a Buddhist. She converted in a season 13 episode titled She of Little Faith, after Springfield's church is sponsorship corrupted, and she finds herself unable to connect with the commercialized version of the faith she grew up in. She explores other traditions and finds in Buddhism a framework that accommodates her commitment to compassion, her skepticism of dogma, and her need for a spiritual practice that does not require her to park her intelligence at the door. Marge was initially upset by this. The episode handles the conversion with genuine respect for both Lisa's choice and Marge's feelings. Lisa remains Buddhist throughout the rest of the show's run. It is one of the clearest examples of the show allowing a character to genuinely change and remain changed. Fact 64. Lisa is a vegetarian. This was established in a Season 7 episode that is notable for the manner in which it handles the topic, not as a preachy pro-vegetarian argument, but as a story about a kid who makes a sincere moral choice and then has to navigate the social friction that choice creates. Lisa's decision to stop eating meat is her own, made after a specific emotional trigger, and the episode follows the consequences with honesty. She cannot get support from her family. She cannot find allies at school. She feels isolated in her conviction. And then she finds Paul and Linda McCartney, who are voicing themselves, and they offer both solidarity and a message that is directly addressed to her. You will find your people. Just hold on. Lisa holds on. Fact 65. Lisa has had several romantic interests across the show's run, each of which has illuminated something different about how she operates in the world. Her first notable crush was on Langdon Alger, a new student who was bookish and sensitive and quickly moved away, as Lisa's interests tend to. She has also had feelings for Nelson Muntz, the bully of Springfield Elementary, in a storyline that the show handled with surprising psychological depth. What does it mean that the smartest, most principled girl in class has feelings for the school's most unreconstructed troublemaker? The show does not moralize about it. It just depicts it with an honesty about attraction that many children's programs avoid. Fact 66. Lisa founded the Springfield chapter of the Mensa Society and briefly ran the town of Springfield when the intellectual vanguard of its population took control of local government during a civic vacancy. The experiment did not go well. Freed from the practical constraints of public approval and budgetary reality, the Mensa group implemented changes that were theoretically elegant and practically disastrous. Lisa's idealism, the episode suggests, is real and admirable and genuinely difficult to implement in a world that is messy and resistant and full of people with different ideas about what improvement means. The episode is a sympathetic critique of pure rationalism as a governing philosophy. Lisa goes back to being 8 years old, slightly wiser about the gap between knowing what is right and making it happen. Fact 67. Lisa loves horses. This is one of the simpler, warmer facts about her. An uncomplicated enthusiasm in a life that tends toward complicated ones. She once had a horse named Princess, briefly, which was her dream materialized, and then the show found a way to complicate even this. Keeping a horse in suburban Springfield is not practical. The horse could not stay. But the episode in which Lisa has a horse and rides it, and is just a girl on a horse in the sunshine, that episode exists, and the joy in it is completely unironic. Fact 68, Lisa has a talent for impersonation that the show uses occasionally and never fully explores. She can mimic voices with accuracy. She has demonstrated this in several episodes, always in passing, always as a background detail rather than a plot point. A genius who can also do impressions is an interesting person. The show keeps noticing this about Lisa and then moving on. Perhaps because pursuing it would require the show to give Lisa something she is unambiguously good at and consistently celebrated for, and the show tends to give Lisa gifts that come with costs. Fact 69. In one episode, Lisa discovers she has a talent for making money on the stock market. She analyzes companies, makes predictions with uncanny accuracy, and briefly becomes wealthy within the parameters of a school investment simulation. The show plays this straight. Her predictions are correct because she is doing genuine analysis, not guessing. What happens when a child demonstrates the ability to do something adults cannot? Usually the show has Springfield find a way to complicate it, and this episode is no exception. But the baseline fact, Lisa Simpson, age 8, stock analyst, is a delightful image. Fact 70. Lisa has a recurring nightmare about the SAT. This small recurring detail speaks to something the show understands about children under pressure, that academic anxiety is real and specific and shapes the interior life in ways that adults who are not paying attention do not always notice. Lisa, who is probably going to ace the SAT by several hundred points, dreams about failing it. That is what it is like to be a child for whom achievement is both a strength and a source of fear. High standards are a kind of cage too. Lisa lives in that cage and is mostly okay with it, and sometimes, at night, is not. Fact 71. Lisa was accepted to Harvard in a Future Set episode, or Springfield's equivalent, and the show used this as an opportunity to explore what success looks like for a person like Lisa, and whether the path she has always been headed down actually leads somewhere she wants to go. Lisa's trajectory toward elite academic achievement is so thoroughly established that the show sometimes pauses and asks whether that trajectory was chosen by Lisa or simply assumed on her behalf by everyone around her. The answer is probably both. Lisa chose it, yes, but she also had very little space in which to choose anything else. Fact 72. Lisa once temporarily gave up the saxophone for a period in the show, a storyline that treated this as a genuine crisis of identity rather than a casual subplot. The saxophone is not just an instrument for Lisa. It is the place where her intelligence and her emotion and her creativity all meet, where she can speak a language more honest than the one she uses in classrooms and dinner table conversations. When she stops playing, something central to her goes quiet. The show understood this without spelling it out. Fact 73. Lisa's relationship with her father is one of the most emotionally rich relationships in the show. Homer does not understand Lisa. He tries to intermittently and imperfectly, but the wavelength she occupies is simply not accessible to him in any sustained way. And yet they love each other with a completeness that does not require understanding. Homer shows up for Lisa. He shows up badly, frequently, making the wrong gesture, saying the wrong thing, turning the moment from tender to awkward with a reliable swiftness. But he shows up. And Lisa, who has a complex private life of intellectual disappointment and social isolation, needs someone to show up, even badly, even imperfectly, even Homer. Fact 74. Lisa has been described by the show's writers in various interviews as the character they find hardest to write Not because she is difficult as a character, but because keeping her honest to who she is while also giving her stories that function as comedy is a genuine challenge. Lisa is too sincere for easy jokes. Her earnestness is not something the show can subvert without betraying her. So the comedy in Lisa episodes tends to come from the situations she encounters, rather than from any gap between who she is and how she presents. Lisa has no gap like that. What you see with Lisa is what is there. Fact 75. In Lisa's Substitute, a Season 2 episode that is regularly cited as one of the show's best, Lisa develops a crush on a substitute teacher named Mr. Bergstrom, who treats her intellectual interests with genuine seriousness. He doesn't condescend. He doesn't pat her on the head. He talks to her like someone who has real things to say. When he leaves, she is devastated. She goes to Homer, of all people, and Homer does something that the show has been building to for the episode. He gets it right. Yet he holds her. He tells her that she will always have a father and gives her a note that says, "You are Lisa Simpson," which is everything, which is the whole thing. The episode ends with Lisa understanding something about where to look for sustenance that she could not have said in words, but now carries as knowledge. It is one of the most beautiful 20 minutes of television the show has ever produced. Fact 76. Lisa has a complicated relationship with her own gender and what it means to be a girl in Springfield. She has pushed back against gender expectations, fought for inclusion of female perspectives, and engaged with feminist ideas since she was old enough to understand them, which, being Lisa, was quite young. She is not performing this engagement, and it comes from genuine experience. The experience of being the most capable person in many rooms and being treated as less than that because of her age and gender simultaneously. Lisa's feminism is personal. It is grounded in the specific texture of her daily life. That makes it something real rather than something rhetorical. Fact 77. Lisa is the only member of the Simpson family who is visibly affected by the quality of her surroundings. Homer can be happy in a dumpster if there is food there. Bart can be happy almost anywhere that permits motion. But Lisa is sensitive to her environment, to ugliness, to noise, to the quality of the air and the conversation and the ideas in the room. She thrives in beautiful, thoughtful spaces. She wilts in loud, careless ones. Springfield is mostly a loud, careless space. And this is the longest-running source of gentle tragedy in Lisa's life. A girl of extraordinary sensitivity living in a town of robust insensitivity, finding beauty where she can, making it when she cannot find it. Fact 78. Lisa has written extensively for various outlets: school newspapers, journals, letters to public figures. She writes with confidence and clarity and a personal voice that is recognizably her own. Writing is, alongside the saxophone, one of the places where Lisa is most fully herself. And like the saxophone, it is a place where the emotion and the intellect stop arguing with each other and work together. Lisa's writing is the interior life made external. The show has occasionally let us see pieces of it, and what we see is always honest, sometimes painfully so. Fact 79, in the Simpson family ecology, Lisa is the one who most clearly sees what is happening. She sees the pollution. She sees the corruption. She sees the dynamics in her own family with a clarity that is both a gift and a burden. She does not always know what to do with what she sees. But she sees it, and she cannot unsee it. And this is the long, quiet work of being Lisa Simpson. Carrying knowledge that nobody else in your immediate world seems to want, and deciding every day whether to keep carrying it or put it down. She keeps carrying it. Every episode. Every season. She is 8 years old and she keeps carrying it. Fact 80. Lisa has never won. Not cleanly, not completely, not in a way that lasts. She has small victories. A contest here, a recognition there, a moment where the right person heard what she was saying. But the large victories, the ones that would change Springfield, the ones that would make her daily life permanently different, those have not come. And the show has been honest about this for 36 years. Lisa has not won. She keeps trying. That is the thing. She keeps trying. And there is something about a character who keeps trying without winning, who keeps showing up with her saxophone and her books and her genuine conviction that things can be better, that makes her one of the great characters in the history of American television. Not because she wins, because she doesn't, and she tries anyway. Section 5. Maggie Simpson. 20 facts. We come now to the quietest member of the family. 1-year-old. Has been 1-year-old since 1989. Never walks without falling. Never speaks beyond occasional sounds. Never puts the pacifier down. Sits in the background of family scenes with those enormous, attentive eyes watching everything. Maggie Simpson is the show's most patient mystery. Fact 81. Maggie's first word was daddy, and it was voiced by Elizabeth Taylor. This is one of the stranger facts in Simpsons history, and strangeness is a high bar on this show. Taylor was one of the most famous actors in Hollywood, an Academy Award winner, a legendary figure, a person whose name carried the full weight of cinema history. And she used it to say daddy as a baby in a cartoon. The word is delivered with surprising warmth, and it appears in a Season 2 episode as a single moment. One word, one time, Elizabeth Taylor, and then Maggie goes quiet again. The word has not been meaningfully repeated. Maggie's silence resumed and has continued ever since. Fact 82. Maggie was nominated for an Academy Award. The short film, The Longest Daycare, 7 minutes of Maggie navigating the Einstein School for Tots to protect a caterpillar from a bully, was submitted for and nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film in 2013. It did not win, but the nomination was entirely legitimate and based on the quality of the film, which is genuinely exceptional. 7 minutes. No dialogue from the lead character. A story about a baby protecting something small and fragile from something large and careless. It is, in miniature, the purest distillation of what Maggie is. Fact 83. Maggie consistently demonstrates problem-solving capabilities that exceed those of adults around her. She has bypassed security systems, organized other infants, constructed tools from available materials, and navigated physical environments using spatial reasoning that should not be present in a 1-year-old. The show presents these moments without comment, tucking them into episodes as background details that careful viewers will notice and incurious viewers will miss. This is itself a reflection of Maggie's strategy. Her capabilities are real, but she exercises them below the threshold of adult attention. They are visible to those who are paying attention. Most people are not paying attention. Fact 84. Maggie's relationship with the pacifier is one of the show's most persistent visual motifs. She is never without it. In episodes where she is shown without it, briefly, usually in crisis moments, there is an unease that the show uses deliberately. The pacifier is armor. It is Maggie's primary communication device, since the sounds she makes with it convey emotional nuance that compensates for the absence of words. It is also, in the radiation theory framework, an interesting detail. A child so cognitively far ahead of her physical development that she maintains an infant prop as a form of protective cover, keeping the world from recognizing what is actually operating behind those enormous eyes. Fact 85. Maggie once saved Homer's life. Not in a cutaway gag, not in a dream sequence, in a straightforward action scene in which Maggie did something precise and effective that a 1-year-old should not have been able to do, and Homer was saved. Homer did not fully process what had happened. The family moved on. Maggie returned to her position in the background, watching. This is the rhythm of Maggie's heroism in the show. She does remarkable things and is not credited for them, partly because the world does not expect a baby to do remarkable things and therefore does not notice when one does, and partly because Maggie, with evident deliberateness, has made sure not to be noticed. Fact 86. In several flash-forward episodes, a grown Maggie has been depicted as extremely successful in various fields: a rock musician, a doctor, an adventurer. Each version of adult Maggie is confident, capable, and slightly larger than life in a way that suggests the show has always understood that whatever is behind that pacifier, it is considerable. The adult Maggies are all different in their specific paths, but consistent in their character. Someone who came into their own completely and decisively, who turned the long, patient quiet of childhood into something extraordinary. The show teases this. It never lands it. Maggie remains 1-year-old, watching. Fact 87. Maggie's birth was depicted in a Season 8 episode that is one of the show's most warmly received. Homer, facing a financial crisis, decides to return to work at the nuclear plant after having quit. The episode is structured as a series of flashbacks. In the closing scenes, Homer removes a piece of paper that has been covering a motivational poster above his workstation. The paper we see is Maggie's birth photo. The poster beneath it reads, "Do it for her." The episode revealed why Homer keeps going back to a job he hates, a workplace that is slowly poisoning him, a situation that would appear from the outside to be pure defeat. He does it for Maggie. Not he does it for all of them. The poster has since become one of the most recognizable images in Simpsons history. Do it for her. Fact 88. Maggie has a nemesis. His name is Gerald, and he is the one-eyebrowed baby who appears as an antagonist in various episodes, most notably in The Longest Daycare. Gerald and Maggie have been adversaries since infancy. They are depicted as having an instinctive recognition of each other as opposites, as though even at 1 year old, the fundamental opposition of their orientations toward the world is visible. Gerald is destructive. Maggie is protective. Gerald is careless. Maggie is precise. They are the same age, the same size, and on completely different moral wavelengths. The show uses this opposition with a lightness that masks how cleanly it defines both characters. Fact 89. Maggie received a perfect score on an infant intelligence test in one episode. The details of the test and the score have varied depending on the episode and who is administering it, but the consistent implication is that Maggie's measurable intelligence is extraordinary, literally off the scale that the test was designed to measure. The show treats this as a one-episode revelation that other characters fail to fully absorb or retain. By the next episode, Maggie is back in the background. The score is not mentioned again. This is how Springfield maintains itself, not through active conspiracy necessarily, but through the collective inattention that allows obvious things to go unnoticed. Fact 90. Maggie's full name is Margaret Evelyn Simpson. Evelyn is a name with a particular quality, slightly formal, slightly old-fashioned, and carrying a weight and seriousness that contrasts sharply with the diminutive Maggie. Homer and Marge gave their youngest child a middle name with gravity in it. Whether this was intentional or accidental, it suits her. There is gravity behind Maggie's eyes. There has always been gravity behind Maggie's eyes. The name, it turns out, was not random. Fact 91. Maggie uses her pacifier to communicate with a specificity that other characters have occasionally decoded. Homer, in particular, has moments of unusual attunement to what Maggie is expressing. Moments where he reads her correctly and responds in a way that suggests their bond is deeper than it looks on the surface. Homer may not be capable of understanding Lisa's vocabulary or following Bart's scheming logic, but with Maggie, the wordless one, the quiet one, Homer is sometimes exactly right. There is something about that, about the man with the lowest IQ in the family being the one who most clearly hears its quietest member, that feels true in a way that resists easy explanation. Fact 92. Maggie has been depicted in multiple non-canon Halloween specials as significantly more powerful than her regular canon version suggests. In Treehouse of Horror segments, Maggie has supernatural abilities, alien origins, and in one famous segment, the capacity for violence that is played for the darkest possible comedy. These Halloween versions of Maggie are exaggerations. They are not meant to be taken as canonical fact, but they exaggerate in a particular direction. They take the quiet, watchful, capable Maggie of the regular show and ask, what if there were no limits on what is already there? The answer, every Halloween, is something extraordinary and a little frightening. Fact 93. Maggie appears in the opening couch gag of every episode, the sequence where the family rushes to the couch and settles in to watch television. She is always last, always arriving after the others, always fitting herself into the family arrangement on the couch with the precision of someone who has done this many times. And she has. Every episode, every season. 36 years of Maggie arriving last and fitting in perfectly. There is something in that image, the smallest one, the quietest one, fitting into the family's shape with effortless precision. That says something true about her place in the Simpsons world. She belongs there. She has always belonged there. She just doesn't make a fuss about it. Fact 94. Maggie's crying is one of the show's most recognizable sounds. Not because it is especially distinctive in isolation, but because of when it appears and what surrounds it. The sound of Maggie crying in the background of a scene functions as a kind of emotional barometer, a signal that something in the family situation has exceeded a threshold. That tension has built to a point where even the quietest, most patient member of the household cannot sustain equanimity. When Maggie cries, things are genuinely difficult. She is not a baby who cries for nothing. Pay attention to when she cries. It is always about something. Fact 95. The final shot of the Who Shot Mr. Burns conclusion shows Maggie alone in a room after everyone has left, checking to ensure she is not being observed, and then performing a gesture that mimics the firing of a gun. The show presents this as confirmation that Maggie is the shooter, but the gesture can be read differently, not as a confession but as memory, a baby replaying something she witnessed, imitating an adult the way babies imitate adults. The ambiguity is deliberate. The show knows what it put there. It is not committed to one interpretation, which means the question, what does Maggie know and how does she know it, remains open. This is consistent with Maggie as a character. She keeps the open questions open. Fact 96. Maggie appears on the grocery store scanner at the beginning of every episode in the show's original opening title sequence, the one where Marge is shopping at the supermarket and the cashier rings up the family's groceries. At one point, the scanner picks up Maggie, who is sitting in the cart, and displays a price. The price changes between episodes and has contained various numbers and in-jokes over the years. The most notable version shows the price as $847.63, which was, in 1989, the estimated monthly cost of raising a child. Matt Groening included this detail deliberately. Even in a throwaway gag in an opening title sequence, Maggie has a price attached to her. This detail is early evidence of what the show was always going to do with Maggie. Make her mean more than she appears to. Fact 97. Maggie has a security blanket that appears in various early episodes and disappears later in the show's run without comment. The blanket is yellow and worn and appears to provide genuine comfort. Its disappearance from later episodes was not a creative decision made for thematic reasons. It simply drifted out of the show's visual vocabulary as the animation style evolved and the character's relationship to infant props was simplified. But in the episodes where it appears, it is a humanizing detail, a reminder that behind the extraordinary cognition and the strategic silence, there is also just a baby who finds comfort in a soft yellow thing. Both of those things can be true at once. They are both true at once. Fact 98. Maggie has a genuine relationship with Marge that the show has depicted in small, warm moments across many episodes. Marge holds her. Marge reads to her. Marge speaks to her with the same careful attention she gives to Bart's crises and Lisa's intellectual needs. The same quality of presence, just directed at a different frequency. And Maggie responds to Marge in ways that suggest she understands more of what is being communicated than a one-year-old should. When Marge is sad, Maggie is still. When Marge is happy, Maggie is animated. She reads her mother. She has been reading her mother since birth. Fact 99. In the song Maggie Makes Three, the episode, not an actual song, Homer reveals that when Marge became pregnant with Maggie after he had left the nuclear plant for his dream job at a bowling alley, he had to return to Burns's employ. He was devastated. He was angry. He did not want to go back. And then Maggie was born. And the episode reveals the poster, "Do It For Her," and we understand that the anger did not survive contact with her. Maggie, simply by existing, made the unbearable bearable. She turned the thing Homer hated into something he could endure because the thing he loved was on the other side of it. That is a lot of weight for a one-year-old to carry. Maggie carries it without noticing, which is the only way it can be carried. Fact 100. The 100th fact about the Simpson family is this one. Maggie Simpson is the most optimistic figure in Springfield, not because she is unaware of what surrounds her. She is more aware than almost anyone, but because she has chosen, and it reads, in everything the show has shown us about her, as a genuine choice to watch and wait rather than to despair. She looks at the world with those enormous eyes. and she does not look away. She does not flinch. She is patient in a way that is not the patience of someone who does not understand the situation. It is the patience of someone who understands it completely and has decided that the moment is not yet right. Maggie's optimism is not naive. It is strategic. It is the most considered optimism in the show. She is 1 year old and she has already figured out something that takes most people decades to reach, that waiting for the right moment is not the same as giving up. You are waiting. You are watching. The moment is coming. And when it does, Maggie Simpson will be ready. Section 6, Mr. Burns and Smithers. 20 facts. There is something almost operatic about Charles Montgomery Burns. He is old in a way that goes beyond age. He is the oldest man in Springfield, and possibly the oldest man in America, and the specific quality of his oldness, the papery skin, the voice that seems to come from some era before recorded sound, the eyes that have seen things that contemporary human beings have no frame for, gives him a grandeur that the show does not allow him to be merely villainous. Burns is not merely evil. Burns is something larger and stranger than evil. He is the distilled essence of unchecked power across generations. What happens when a person accumulates advantage for long enough without meaningful resistance? And beside him, always, is Wayland Smithers. Fact 101. Mr. Burns's full name is Charles Montgomery Plantagenet Schicklgruber Burns. The middle names are an extraordinary construction, Plantagenet connecting him to medieval English royalty, Schicklgruber being the original family name of Adolf Hitler's paternal grandmother, a detail the show deploys with its characteristic willingness to go further than seems wise. The name is a compressed history of concentrated power, aristocratic, European, morally compromised, at every juncture. Burns did not choose his name. He received it as the heir to a lineage that had been accumulating advantage and avoiding consequences for centuries. Fact 102. Burns attended Yale University. This is depicted in several flashback episodes and referenced in dialogue. His time at Yale placed him in the educational milieu of the American elite, the world of generational wealth, secret societies, networks of influence that would serve him throughout his adult life. There is an episode in which Burns returns to Yale for a reunion and is greeted as a distinguished alumnus. The episode hints at the web of connections and mutual favors that connects Burns to American institutional power at the highest levels. The kind of power that does not appear in newspapers and does not need to, because it is exercised in rooms that journalists are not invited into. Fact 103. Burns served in World War II, though his service has been depicted with a consistent moral ambiguity. He was not a hero in the war. The show has suggested, across several episodes and throwaway lines, that Burns's wartime activities were closer to the category of opportunism than valor. He obtained a $1 trillion bill from the United States government during the war under circumstances that have never been fully explained. But he kept it for decades. He then lost it to Fidel Castro in a card game in Cuba, which is a sentence that requires no additional elaboration because it is already doing everything a sentence can do. Fact 104. Burns's doctor has informed him that he has every disease known to medical science simultaneously, a condition described as Three Stooges syndrome, in which each illness cancels out the others, leaving Burns in a state of total biological gridlock. No single disease can kill him because all of them are trying to kill him at the same time. He is the sickest man in the United States, and he is functionally indestructible. This is played for comedy but contains, under examination, a terrifying internal logic. Burns has been poisoned by everything. Everything that should have killed him became part of the system that keeps him alive. Fact 105. Burns undergoes a weekly medical treatment so intensive that it causes his body to emit a visible green glow. This treatment is what keeps him alive from week to week. Without it, he has 1 week to live. With it, he has indefinitely many weeks to live, provided the treatment is administered on schedule. Smithers manages this schedule. Smithers has never missed an appointment in the entire run of the show. The treatment involves radiation, naturally. The man who owns a nuclear power plant is personally dependent on controlled radiation exposure for survival. He is not just profiting from radiation, he is sustained by it. Fact 106. Burns has a very poor memory for the names and faces of the people who work for him. Most notably, he famously cannot remember Homer's name despite Homer having worked at the plant for decades. This is not simply carelessness. It speaks to something structural about how Burns relates to the people beneath him. They are not people to Burns in the full sense. They are functions. They are units of labor. Homer is the round one, or the man with the donut. He is categorized rather than known. This is a consistent quality of power. The person at the top can afford not to know the names of the people at the bottom because the system does not require that knowledge of them. Fact 107. Burns once attempted to block out the sun over Springfield. He built a device capable of positioning a large disk between Springfield and solar radiation, forcing every resident of the town to rely on his nuclear power plant for all of their energy needs, including heating and lighting, at all hours of the day and night. This was not a metaphor, that he literally tried to steal the sun. The ambition of this particular scheme distinguishes it even among Burns's many extraordinary projects. Most villains want money, or power, or revenge. Burns wanted the sun. He wanted to own the light. Fact 108. Wayland Smithers Jr. is devoted to Mr. Burns in a way that has been the subject of more interpretation and analysis than any other relationship in the show's history. The show spent many seasons depicting Smithers' devotion with a careful, knowing ambiguity, making it visible, making it legible to attentive viewers, but not explicitly naming it. In season 27, the show finally addressed it directly. Smithers came out as gay, and the episode dealt with his feelings for Burns openly. Burns's response was, characteristically, self-focused and oblivious. He cared about Smithers primarily in relation to what Smithers did for him. This has always been the tragedy of their dynamic. Fact 109. Smithers' father, Wayland Smithers Sr., died protecting Burns. This detail, revealed in a flashback, establishes the generational dimension of the Smithers-Burns relationship. The son's devotion to Burns is not only personal, it is inherited, connected to a family sacrifice that occurred before Smithers was old enough to choose his loyalties. He was raised with Burns as a figure of importance and consequence. His father died for Burns. The devotion that followed was not simply a personal quirk. It was the psychological inheritance of a child who grew up in the shadow of his father's sacrifice. Fact 110. Burns has a teddy bear named Bobo that he has treasured since childhood. This is perhaps the most humanizing detail in his entire characterization. In a Season 5 episode, the bear, a small, worn, one-eyed toy, is discovered frozen in a block of ice. Burns wants it back desperately. He will trade enormous sums of money for it. He will cause massive inconvenience to the entire town of Springfield for it. And when he finally holds it again, when he sits alone in his enormous mansion with this small, battered bear from his distant childhood, he is not the monstrous industrialist. He is just an old man holding something he lost. The show is generous with Burns in these moments. It does not excuse what he is, but it does not reduce him to it. Fact 111. Burns has owned the Springfield nuclear power plant for decades. How many exactly is unclear because the show's timeline is deliberately fluid on this point. What is clear is that the plant predates Burns's current tenure, that he acquired it under circumstances the show has never fully explained, and that his ownership of it has been the central economic fact of Springfield's existence for as long as the town has existed in its current form. Springfield runs on Burns's electricity. Springfield's economy depends on Burns's plant. Every citizen of the town is, in some structural sense, dependent on a man whose relationship to their well-being is at best indifferent and at worst actively hostile. Fact 112. Burns has a vast personal fortune that the show has placed at various points in the multiple billions. His wealth predates the Industrial Revolution in terms of the family foundation it is built on. The Burns family are among the show's hints at old American money, the kind that does not talk about itself in the nouveau riche way, the kind that simply exists at a scale and permanence that makes the concept of legal accountability feel, to those who possess it, like a concern for other people. Burns has never meaningfully faced legal consequences for anything. This is not luck. It is infrastructure. Fact 113. In a famous episode, Burns encounters a small baby animal in the woods, a small, helpless creature, and experiences an unexpected softening, a moment of genuine tenderness. This is then used as evidence that Burns contains, buried extremely deep, the capacity for something like compassion. The show visits this territory periodically, the humanity inside the monster, the warmth inside the cold, and then retreats from it, that restoring Burns to his default setting. The retreating is as honest as the visiting. Burns has a heart somewhere in that ancient frame. He has chosen, repeatedly and deliberately, not to lead with it. Fact 114. Smithers is genuinely talented. He speaks multiple languages, plays multiple instruments, has professional competence across an extraordinary range of fields, and has demonstrated intelligence and capability that would make him successful in any number of careers that do not involve managing the medical schedule of a centenarian billionaire. He stays. He keeps staying. The devotion that keeps him there is, by now, the defining fact of his life. It has organized his time, his skills, his identity, his future around one person who does not and cannot fully reciprocate. This is the tragedy the show has been building quietly for 36 years. Smithers deserves a life. He will not claim one as long as Burns lives. Burns might live forever. Fact 115. Burns owns a mansion called Springfield Manor that is depicted with varying degrees of grandeur depending on the episode. It is enormous, certainly. It has rooms that have not been opened in decades. It has wings that Smithers cannot always account for. There is a dungeon. There is almost certainly something in the basement that the show has not shown us. Burns's home is, like Burns himself, a site of accumulated history, a structure that has been added to and modified across generations, each layer of renovation burying a previous layer of something that was probably fine to leave buried. The manor is less a home than an archive of consequence, i.e. Burns lives inside the evidence of everything he has done. Fact 116. Burns has met multiple presidents of the United States. He has met them, dealt with them, and in most cases found them to be less formidable than their office suggests. This is consistent with Burns's general orientation toward power. He respects the accumulation of it, not the performance of it. Presidents are temporary. Burns is not temporary. Presidents arrive with agendas and leave with legacies. Burns arrives with money and leaves with everything. Fact 117. Smithers maintains a vast collection of Malibu Stacy merchandise, Malibu Stacy being Springfield's version of Barbie, a fashion doll that is the subject of a separate Lisa-centric episode about gender representation in toy marketing. Smithers' collection is not presented as ironic. It is presented as a genuine enthusiasm, a personal interest that he maintains without apparent embarrassment, at least in his private moments. The show gives Smithers this collection with affection, a reminder that the man who manages Burns's existence is also a person with a full private interior, enthusiasms that are entirely his own, a self that exists outside the orbit of the man he serves. Fact 118. Burns has stated that he finds human beings to be fundamentally disappointing. This is not bitterness speaking. It is, for Burns, an empirical assessment based on a century of observation. He has watched people behave in ways that confirmed his low expectations reliably enough that the expectations have hardened into permanent assumption. He is not surprised by human venality. He has encountered it too many times to be surprised. But what the show occasionally suggests, in those moments of Bobo-clutching humanity, is that this hardness was not always there. That there was a Burns, long ago, who expected more of people. That the current Burns is the result of being right about them too many times. Fact 119. In Homer the Smithers, Homer temporarily fills in for Smithers and does an absolutely catastrophic job of managing Burns. What the episode reveals, underneath the comedy, is how completely Burns depends on Smithers for basic functioning. Burns cannot operate a telephone. He cannot make his own breakfast. He cannot navigate his own home without guidance. The episode makes explicit what the show has been implying for years. That the relationship between Burns and Smithers is not simply loyalty meeting power, it is interdependence. Burns needs Smithers to be Burns. Smithers has given over his entire life to being needed. They are, in a sad and specific way, exactly what the other one required. Fact 120. The relationship between Burns and Homer across all its complications contains something the show keeps returning to: the profound obliviousness of power to the people it affects. Burns genuinely does not know Homer's name. He genuinely does not think about what his plant does to the people who work in it and live around it. This is not performed callousness. It is genuine incapacity. The incapacity of someone who has spent so long insulated from consequence that consequence has become a theoretical concept rather than an experienced reality. Homer is not a person to Burns. Homer is a background detail. Now, that gap between Homer's full humanity and Burns's inability to perceive it is the show's most persistent statement about power. Power does not see people. It never has. It never will. Section 7. Ned Flanders and Family. 20 facts. Ned Flanders has been Homer Simpson's neighbor for 36 years. He has never once complained about it. He has lent Homer tools that were never returned. He has offered help that was rarely acknowledged. He has extended forgiveness that, in the economy of what he has been asked to forgive, represents a supernatural achievement of the human spirit, or, as the show eventually revealed, the result of behavioral conditioning so thorough that it rewired his capacity for anger entirely. Whether Ned's goodness is genuine virtue or engineered compliance is the show's deepest question about him. The answer, frustratingly and beautifully, is probably both. Fact 121. Ned Flanders' full name is Nedward Flanders Jr. His father, Nedward Flanders Sr., was a beatnik, a member of the 1950s counterculture that rejected conventional social norms, embraced jazz and poetry and spontaneous living, and was deeply, philosophically opposed to discipline. Growing up without boundaries or structure, young Ned was, by all accounts, a terror, uncontrollable, prone to violence, socially unmanageable. His parents, in despair, took him to a psychiatrist named Dr. Foster, who spent 8 months re-engineering Ned's behavior through an intensive conditioning program. The program worked. Ned became the most disciplined, most controlled, most consistently pleasant person in Springfield. The show invites you to ask whether the process that produced this result was healing or something closer to erasure. Fact 122. Ned is an exceptional athlete. This is a physical fact about him that sits in quiet contrast to Homer's physicality. Homer is soft, slow, and remarkably resilient. Ned is toned, disciplined, and physically capable in ways that Springfield's general population is not. He runs. He maintains an exercise regimen. His body reflects the same disciplined commitment to structure that his spiritual life reflects. Ned takes care of himself. This is partly genuine virtue and partly, the show occasionally hints, a form of control, the body as the one domain where Ned can impose absolute order in a world that frequently does not cooperate. Fact 123. Ned's wife Maude died in a season 11 episode when Homer, attempting to dodge t-shirts being fired from a cannon at a NASCAR event, caused the shirts to redirect toward Maude in the stands, hitting her and knocking her from the bleachers. She died. Homer caused it through selfish, reflexive self-protection. Ned forgave him. He forgave him in the way that the conditioning program prepared him to forgive, not in the manner of someone who has worked through genuine grief and reached genuine peace, but in the manner of someone whose anger suppression mechanism did not allow anything else. The show keeps this distinction visible. Ned's forgiveness is real. Its source is complicated. Fact 124. After Maude's death, Ned experienced a genuine crisis of faith. Not a quick one that resolved within the episode, a sustained one that lasted several seasons and manifested in ways both quiet and dramatic. That he had built his entire identity around his faith and his family, and one of those foundations had been removed without warning or justice. A good man who did everything right lost his wife because his neighbor was being selfish. Where is God in that story? Ned keeps going to church. He keeps praying. But the show allows him the honesty of not having an answer, which is the most dignified thing it could do. Fact 125. Ned once had a psychological breakdown in a spectacular and specifically detailed way. When a hurricane destroyed his house and the community rebuilt it badly, a chaotic, structurally unsound structure assembled with insufficient attention and too much enthusiasm, and it collapsed immediately upon completion, Ned snapped. He stood in front of the town and said everything he had been holding back. He called out Homer. And he called out the entire community. The words were specific, pointed, and clearly the product of a very long list of grievances that had been accumulating for years. Then he checked himself into a mental health facility. He sat with a professional. He was honest about the depth of what was beneath the pleasantness. It was one of the most human things the show has ever depicted, the collapse of a maintained facade and the bewildered person inside it. Fact 126. Ned has two sons, Rod and Todd, who are among the most consistently unfortunate children in Springfield's already considerable gallery of unfortunate children. They are deeply sheltered. They have been raised in an environment of such intense religious observance and protective parenting that the ordinary textures of childhood, mildly violent cartoons, popular music, foods that are not nutritionally optimal, are completely foreign to them. They are kind. They are gentle. They are also completely unprepared for a world that is neither of those things, and the show occasionally allows you to see the vulnerability this creates. Rod and Todd are their father's sons, programmed for goodness in a town that does not reward it. Fact 127. Ned later remarried to Edna Krabappel, Bart's teacher. This development occurred in season 23 and was the result of a fan vote. The show gave viewers the power to determine whether Ned and Edna's relationship would progress, and the viewers voted yes. Ned and Edna are, on paper, an improbable pairing. The most devout man in Springfield and the most cynically realistic woman at Springfield Elementary. But the show gave the relationship genuine tenderness, a sense of two people who had each suffered losses and were choosing to try again with clear eyes. When Marcia Wallace, who voiced Edna, died in 2013, the show retired the character respectfully and allowed Ned to grieve again. He had learned to do it the first time. The second time, he had more practice. Fact 128. Ned's biblical knowledge is encyclopedic and specifically detailed. He can cite passages, chapter and verse, for virtually any situation. He does this not as a performance, but as a natural reflex. The scripture is there, readily accessible, organized in his memory the way other people organize practical information. This knowledge has occasionally served him well and occasionally made him difficult to be around, which is true of most encyclopedic knowledge on any subject. What is consistently true is that Ned's faith is not casual. It is not performed for social approval. It is the central organizing principle of his interior life, and he has maintained it at real personal cost. That commitment, whatever you make of its object, is genuine. Fact 129. Ned has a rumpus room in his house. This is a small domestic detail that humanizes him in a way that the show does not overload with meaning. It is just a room for having fun in. A room that a man who maintains extraordinary standards in most areas of his life permits himself as a space for relaxed, domestic pleasure. The rumpus room has appeared in several episodes and suggests that Ned, behind the extremely organized religious life and the perfectly maintained lawn and the consistent goodness, also just wants somewhere to unwind. He is not, at his core, joyless. He is someone who has organized joy very carefully to fit it beside everything else he has to maintain. Fact 130. Ned and Homer have, across 36 years of proximity, genuine moments of connection. Not many. The dynamic between them is primarily one of mutual incomprehension. Homer cannot fathom Ned's earnestness. Ned cannot fathom Homer's ease with chaos. But in episodes where the show slows down and puts them genuinely together, in the same emotional moment, facing the same difficulty, there is something there. They need each other in ways neither would articulate. Homer needs Ned's steadiness. Ned needs Homer's uncomplicated, unexpectant affection. The warmth of someone who expects nothing of you and likes you anyway. After 36 years, they are whatever comes after acquaintances and before friends. Springfield probably has a word for it. It has never needed to use it. Fact 131. Ned's name has become a cultural shorthand for a certain kind of extreme religiosity in mainstream American culture. Ned Flanders, or Flanders-esque, has been used in journalism, criticism, and casual conversation to describe behavior or attitudes associated with intense, cheerful, sometimes boundary-oblivious Christian conservatism. The character has influence into how American culture talks about devout Christians in popular media, and this is not a small influence. A fictional neighbor in a cartoon Springfield has shaped the vocabulary of a real country's self-examination. That is an unusual kind of power for a character to have. Fact 132. Ned is better at virtually everything than Homer. Better at parenting, better at home ownership, better at career management, better at community involvement, more financially responsible, more physically healthy, more socially skilled, more consistent in his behavior across different contexts. And yet the show does not hold this up as evidence that Homer should feel inferior, because the show understands something true about people. Being better at things does not automatically translate to having a better life. Ned is better at things, and his wife is gone, and his children are socially fragile, and God has never spoken to him while apparently speaking to Homer on multiple occasions. The scoreboard of measurable virtues does not resolve cleanly into the scoreboard of happiness. Fact 133. God in the show's canon has spoken to Homer. Face to face, multiple times. Homer is not a religious person. He is not particularly virtuous. Not he sleeps through church. He has committed dozens of transgressions against his neighbor, his employer, his community, and basic standards of civic behavior. And God chose to have conversations with him. Ned, who has organized his entire life around his relationship with God, who prays daily and attends church diligently and has never once stopped trying, Ned has not received a visit. He has not received a dream. He has not received a voice in the dark. He has received silence, and he has kept faith with the silence, which is either the most admirable or the most heartbreaking thing in the show, depending on how you are feeling about faith on the day you watch it. Fact 134. Ned's business, the Leftorium, a specialty shop for left-handed people located in the Springfield Mall, has had a turbulent commercial history. And it began as a struggling enterprise that nearly failed, was saved by Homer's genuine effort to help him, and continued with varying degrees of success. The Leftorium is one of Springfield's more charming small business presences, and Ned's pride in it is real. He identified a genuine, underserved need and built a business around it. That is a legitimate entrepreneurial achievement. The fact that his business involves left-handed scissors and left-handed notebooks rather than nuclear reactors or industrial monopolies says something about the scale at which Ned operates. Local, specific, human-sized. Everything burns is not. Fact 135. In a Treehouse of Horror episode, Ned becomes a vampire and preys on Springfield's population in the most courteous, apologetically worded way possible. That he is a murderous creature of the night who apologizes for the inconvenience of needing to drain your blood. This is a Halloween episode, not canon, but it is consistent with Ned's character in a way that is genuinely funny. Even as a monster, Ned's essential politeness is operational. He cannot turn it off. He cannot be impolite even when impolite would be appropriate. The behavioral conditioning runs too deep. Even undead, Ned Flanders is the nicest person in the room. Fact 136. Ned has forgiven Homer for approximately 100 distinct things across the show's run. The forgivenesses range from the trivial, returning borrowed tools in poor condition, waking him at unreasonable hours, destroying minor pieces of his property, to the significant, causing the death of his wife, emotionally manipulating him, taking advantage of his generosity repeatedly over decades. Each forgiveness is granted, each forgiveness is real, and each forgiveness costs Ned something that he cannot fully afford to spend because beneath the conditioning and the faith and the pleasantness, there is a man who has been wronged many times and who has never once been fully made whole. The tab keeps running. Ned keeps forgiving it. This is either sainthood or the most sophisticated suppression of rage in the history of fictional Protestantism. Fact 137. Ned's voice, the specific intonation, the verbal tics, the oakley dokley, and the hi diddly ho, was developed by voice actor Harry Shearer as a deliberate stylistic choice. Shearer, who also voices Burns and Principal Skinner and several other key Springfield characters, that has described Ned's voice as designed to convey a particular quality of optimistic relentlessness, a voice that pushes forward pleasantly regardless of any resistance it encounters. The vocal style became one of the most imitated in the show's history. The neighborino and the various compound words Ned constructs out of cheerful syllables have entered the cultural lexicon in the same way Homer's dough has, as recognizable shorthand for a particular emotional mode. Fact 138. Ned's parenting of Rod and Todd is, by conventional standards, extremely overprotective. But the show treats it with more complexity than simple mockery. Ned is raising his sons alone, at least for the seasons following Maud's death, in a world he genuinely believes is spiritually dangerous, and the protectiveness, however excessive, it comes from a real place of care. He wants his sons to be good. He wants them to be safe. He has made choices about how to protect them that the show does not fully endorse and does not fully condemn, which is the most honest position a show can take about parenting philosophy. Fact 139. Ned is one of the wealthiest non-Burns characters in Springfield. His financial prudence, maintained across decades, has resulted in a level of economic stability that most of Springfield's population does not enjoy. He owns his home outright. He has savings. He does not live paycheck to paycheck. This stands in significant contrast to Homer, who is frequently in financial crisis, and to most of Springfield, which is economically precarious in ways the show depicts with casual honesty. But Ned's financial health is another quietly ironic element of the Homer-Ned dynamic. The man Homer sees as vaguely irritating is, by most measurable standards, managing life significantly better. Fact 140. The show has occasionally imagined Springfield without Ned, episodes where Ned moves away or considers moving away, where the Flanders house stands empty or is occupied by someone else. In these episodes, Homer initially experiences relief and then something more complicated. The absence of the person he found most grating creates a gap he did not anticipate. Springfield is less textured without Ned in it. Homer is less himself without the specific friction of having Ned next door. This is what the show quietly says about the people who annoy you most. They are doing something for you that you do not recognize until they are gone. Ned is doing something for Homer. He always has been. Section 8. Springfield's recurring characters. 20 facts. Springfield is one of the most densely populated fictional towns in the history of American television. Not in terms of census numbers, but in terms of characters. Actual fully drawn people with names and histories and consistent personalities and recurring visual presence. People who populate the background and occasionally move to the foreground, and who together give Springfield the texture of a real community. This section is about 8 of them. The ones who have been there longest, who have contributed most to the ecosystem, who are most worth knowing. Fact 141. Moe Szyslak's full backstory is one of the show's most quietly elaborated character histories. Moe has been depicted at various points as a former child actor. He was a cast member of a Little Rascals-type show in his youth, a period of moderate fame and attention that ended abruptly. He became a bartender. He owns Moe's Tavern, which has been established as a regular dive bar, a mob-connected establishment, a restaurant, a cocktail lounge, and several other things across the show's run. In each incarnation, Moe is present behind the bar, essentially unchanged, romantic, periodically violent, capable of loyalty and generosity in specific circumstances, and capable of the sustained optimism required to change his fundamental situation. Moe loves. He does not know what to do with love. This is the essence of Moe. Fact 142. Barney Gumble, Homer's best friend since childhood, was valedictorian of his high school class. And this is established clearly and emphatically in a flashback episode. Barney Gumble, the man who has been drunk in the same bar stool at Moe's for the entire run of the show, who is regularly depicted in states of profound physical decay, who smells like something that has been left in the sun, was the smartest student in his graduating class. He had a full academic scholarship to a prestigious college. He was going to be someone in a clean and expected and considerable way. And then, the night of his graduation, Homer offered him a beer. It was his first drink, and Barney became what he became. Homer did not know what he was doing, he was celebrating. But the butterfly effect of that one casual gesture, one beer offered, one future altered, is one of the show's darkest small stories. Fact 143. Chief Clancy Wiggum is genuinely good at eating donuts. He is not, by most assessments, genuinely good at police work. The Springfield Police Department under his leadership is functionally ineffective at most aspects of law enforcement, and detectably corrupt in others. Wiggum is not evil. He is not taking bribes to enable specific crimes or protecting specific criminals out of deliberate malice. He is simply, comprehensively, the wrong person for his job. He is unobservant, lazy, poorly trained, and constitutionally averse to the parts of policing that require effort. He loves his son Ralph with a transparency and warmth that is one of the more disarming things about him. He is a bad chief of police and a good father. And Springfield lives in a world where the first of those things matters more for collective outcomes, and the second matters more to the one person who depends on it most. Fact 144. Ralph Wiggum is Chief Wiggum's son, and he occupies a unique position in Springfield's child population. His non-sequitur observations, delivered in a pleasant, unconcerned tone that suggests complete comfort with his own detachment from consensus reality, have become some of the show's most quoted lines. My cat's breath smells like cat food. I'm a unitard. I bent my Wookiee. These are not jokes in the traditional sense. They are reports, accurate accounts of the world as Ralph perceives it, which is a world that is genuinely different from the one other people inhabit. Ralph is not stupid. Ralph is elsewhere. And he lives in a slightly different version of Springfield that the rest of the town can only glimpse through the things he says. Fact 145. Sideshow Bob, real name Robert Underdunk Terwilliger Jr., holds multiple advanced degrees. He has a doctorate. He is deeply cultured, genuinely intellectual, capable of elaborate and sophisticated thought. He is also committed to killing Bart Simpson, a commitment that has persisted across decades and multiple incarcerations without dimming. The show has built Sideshow Bob into one of television's great comic antagonists, a man of real gifts and genuine cultivation who has organized his considerable intelligence around a vendetta against a 10-year-old. The tragedy of Bob is not that he is evil, it is that he could have been so much else, and his fixation on Bart has consumed everything he might have become. Fact 146. Apu Nahasapima Petalon has a PhD in computer science from the Calcutta Institute of Technology. He completed his doctorate in the United States, staying beyond his student visa expiration, and built a life in Springfield through the Quick E-Mart, a convenience store franchise he operated with extraordinary dedication. He earned his citizenship, eventually and legally. He raised 8 children with his wife Manjula. He has been robbed approximately twice a week for the entire run of the show, and handles it with a professional resignation that suggests either exceptional emotional resilience or the complete internalization of a very unfortunate statistical baseline. Fact 147. Krusty the Clown's real name is Herschel Shmoykel Pinchas Yerikam Kristofsky, and he is the son of Rabbi Hyman Kristofsky, a respected religious figure in Springfield's Jewish community. Krusty's relationship with his father is one of the show's most emotionally loaded secondary storylines. A son who chose entertainment over religion, who became famous in a medium his father could not embrace, who spent decades estranged from a father whose approval he never stopped wanting. The estrangement eventually ended in one of the show's most affecting episodes, when Bart and Lisa helped broker a reconciliation. The episode's final scene, Krusty and his father together, the distance finally closed, is simple and earned and genuinely moving. Fact 148. Fat Tony, real name Marion Anthony D'Amico, is Springfield's primary organized crime figure. Yet he runs his operation with a dignity and calm professionalism that distinguishes him from the cartoon version of mobster that a lesser show would have produced. Fat Tony is courteous. He is well-dressed. He conducts business conversations in a measured, almost philosophical register that makes the occasional violence entirely chilling by contrast. He has died and been replaced by his cousin, Fit Tony, who then gained weight and became the new Fat Tony. This is Springfield's version of succession planning. Fact 149. Nelson Muntz's family background is one of the most consistently developed sad backstories among Springfield's child population. His mother, a woman of limited ambition and significant instability, abandons the family periodically throughout the show's run. His father is absent. Nelson raises himself, largely, in a small house that functions less as a home than as a space where he sleeps and stores things. He is the show's primary bully, yes, but the show has never allowed his cruelty to exist without context. Every time Nelson is cruel, the show has established the conditions that produced him. He is a child who learned that the world was hard before anyone taught him that it didn't have to be. His eventual romantic interest in Lisa, and her in him, is the show asking what happens when two lonely people find each other. The show does not give them a clean answer. Fact 150. Milhouse Van Houten's parents divorced in Season 8, an event that is treated with the kind of realism and specificity that makes it one of the show's most quietly affecting storylines. The divorce of Kirk and Luann Van Houten is not dramatic or violent. It is the divorce of two people who have simply run out of the things that kept them together, conducted in front of a child who was not expecting it, and who processes it with a sadness that the show tracks across many subsequent episodes. Milhouse's parents eventually reunite, also in a way that is more realistic than triumphant. A reunion not of passion rekindled, but of mutual recognition that what they had was, despite everything, better than what they had without it. Milhouse watches all of this happen. He becomes, through it, slightly more equipped than his Springfield peers for the emotional complexity of adult relationships. Slightly. Fact 151. Groundskeeper Willie is from Scotland, specifically from a part of Scotland that the show uses to establish his accent and his emotional intensity, both of which are substantial. Willie maintains the grounds of Springfield Elementary with the devotion of someone whose relationship to the land is personal rather than professional. He lives in a shack on school property. He goes above and beyond his job description regularly and is thanked for it approximately never. Willie is one of Springfield's most reliably put-upon figures, a man whose extraordinary physical strength and operational competence go consistently unrecognized by the institution he serves. He has on multiple occasions been hit in the back with an axe. He is fine. He is always fine. He is Scottish. Fact 152. Dr. Nick Riviera. Hi. Almost everybody is Springfield's most frequently consulted but least qualified medical practitioner. His educational credentials are deeply suspect. His medical advice is consistently dangerous. His surgical outcomes have included results that should not legally qualify as outcomes. And yet Springfield residents continue to seek his services, primarily because he is cheap and does not ask uncomfortable questions. Dr. Nick exists in the same space as Homer's employment at the nuclear plant, a symbol of what happens when economic necessity overrides rational evaluation of competence. Springfield cannot afford Dr. Hibbert's rates for everything. Dr. Nick fills the gap. The gap is wide. The results reflect that. Fact 153. The Disco Stew, a Springfield resident perpetually dressed and styled as though the 1970s never ended, has never been given a fully elaborated backstory, and the show has used this absence of backstory as its most creative choice with the character. We know his name, his look, his one-note but perfectly pitched personality. We do not know how he arrived at this, whether it is sincere nostalgia or deliberate affect, or something that started as one and became the other. Disco Stew does not give many interviews. He simply is, fully and completely, at every Springfield gathering, the man who missed the memo that the memo mattered. Fact 154. Hans Mollman, the tiny, elderly, nearly blind man who has died and returned more times than any other character in the show's history, once claimed to be 31 years old. He looks approximately 75. The gap between those numbers is the most disturbing fact in Springfield's demographics. Something aged Hans Mollman catastrophically. He has survived more lethal accidents than any other resident. He has been crushed burned, eaten, and run over, always in the background, always as a brief piece of visual comedy, always returning with no explanation by the next episode. Hans Moleman is Springfield's most persistent mystery. He is also, whenever he is given a line, the show's most unexpectedly funny character, a man who meets every disaster with the calm of someone who has simply seen all of this before. Fact 155. Martin Prince is the smartest student at Springfield Elementary by measured academic performance, which means he occupies an interesting position relative to Lisa. He holds the records, but she holds the room's attention. The test scores suggest they are comparable, but the show consistently treats Lisa as the more genuinely exceptional of the two. Martin is smart in a way that is quantifiable and publicly oriented. He wants the recognition. He wants the grade. He wants to be seen as smart. Lisa is smart in a way that is private and constitutive. She would be the same person if no one ever acknowledged it. This difference in how they wear their intelligence explains the show's different relationship to each of them. Fact 156. Comic book guy, real name Jeff Albertson, a name that required a writer's room intervention to confirm because the show had avoided naming him for over a decade, is the proprietor of the android's dungeon and baseball card shop. He is the show's avatar of a particular kind of cultural obsession. Deep, specific, fiercely proprietary, and socially costly. He knows more about comics than anyone in Springfield. He shares this knowledge with a contempt for the less informed that has limited his social life considerably. He once said, delivering a judgment on a situation he found unsatisfactory, that it was the worst thing ever. The show made this phrase, in his specific vocal delivery, one of its most quoted. He is, despite everything, I'm more human than he presents. The show has given him romantic storylines and moments of genuine softness that complicate the contemptuous exterior. Fact 157. Mayor Quimby, Joe Quimby, the show's recurrent mayor of Springfield, is a Kennedy pastiche, every detail of his presentation drawn from the Kennedy myth. The accent, the hair, the political charisma that coexists comfortably with significant personal corruption. He has been mayor for most of the show's run, with interruptions, re-elections, and recall elections along the way. He is not a good mayor, but he is a Springfield mayor, which means he is good enough for the context, entertaining, relatably corrupt, occasionally accidentally effective. Springfield gets the government it expects, and it expects Quimby. Fact 158. Dr. Hibbert, Julius Hibbert, as the family doctor who treats the Simpsons with consistent competence and an alarming laugh, is one of the show's most reliable secondary characters. He laughs at things that do not warrant laughter, consistently. He will deliver devastating medical news and then chuckle. He will describe serious conditions and then, as he is leaving the room, emit a single heh 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 that does not respond to anything that has just occurred. Whether this laugh is a nervous tick, a professional coping mechanism, or something the show decided is simply true of him and never revisited, is unresolved. But it is one of those small, consistent details that makes Springfield feel like a real place, full of people whose quirks are too specific to have been designed. Fact 159. Patty and Selma, Marge's sisters, have worked at the Springfield DM5 for the entire run of the show. They approach their work with a specific quality of civil servant energy. Not malicious exactly, but thoroughly unconcerned with making the experience pleasant for the people they serve. The DM5, as depicted in The Simpsons, is not a horror of bureaucracy. It is simply a place where two specific women sit and process documentation with the investment of people who understood long ago that investment does not change the outcome. They smoke at their desks. They are judgmental about photographs. They genuinely love Marge and genuinely cannot stand Homer. And these two feelings are consistent enough over 3 decades to qualify as bedrock convictions. Fact 160, the sea captain, Captain McAllister. Captain. A man of unclear maritime origin who speaks exclusively in nautical idioms and metaphors, and who appears to be simultaneously a commercial fisherman, a charter captain, and a general-purpose purveyor of marine-adjacent services, is one of Springfield's most reliably present background figures. He comments on events in his idiom regardless of their relevance to seafaring. He has views. He has weathered a great deal. He appears to have once sailed somewhere and returned with the decision that Springfield was where he needed to be, and he has stayed in character ever since. Section 9, The School Crew. 20 facts. Springfield Elementary has been running for 36 years under the same basic management structure, with the same underfunded budget, the same overworked staff, and the same rotating population of children who pass through it without appearing to age. It is not a good school by objective metrics, but it is Springfield's school, and its staff are among the show's most faithfully elaborated characters. Fact 161. Principal Seymour Skinner, or rather Armin Tamzarian, the man who assumed Skinner's identity after the real Seymour Skinner was presumed killed in Vietnam, has run Springfield Elementary with a combination of genuine dedication and organizational ineffectiveness that has kept the school at its current level of performance for decades. His real backstory, revealed in the show's most controversial episode, is darker than his professional identity suggests. A man who found in an assumed identity the structure and purpose that his own life had never provided. Now, the show made it illegal within Springfield's fiction to ever mention the truth again. The truth is still there. It is just legally suppressed. Fact 162. Edna Krabappel, Bart's fourth-grade teacher, eventually Ned Flanders' wife, was one of the show's most consistently written female characters. She began as a simple antagonist, the cynical, defeated teacher who had stopped expecting much of her students. But across the show's run, she was given history, interiority, romantic life, grief, and eventually a second chance at happiness. She was voiced by Marcia Wallace, who died in 2013, and the show retired the character, at that point out of respect. Krabappel's famous laugh, a braying hey-ay, that could express contempt, amusement, or resignation depending on context, became one of the show's most recognizable sounds. She deserved better than Springfield Elementary. She knew that. She stayed anyway. Fact 163, Groundskeeper Willie, discussed earlier, has been hit in the back with an axe by Groundskeeper Willie on 3 separate occasions in 3 separate Treehouse of Horror episodes. The joke being that a parody of a different horror movie keeps ending the same way for the same person. Willie is the show's recurring victim of back axe violence, which is an extremely specific category of recurring victimhood that the show returns to, with a consistency suggesting genuine affection. He handles it with a stoicism that is either excellent emotional regulation or evidence of a nervous system that has processed so much Highland hardship that an axe in the back barely registers. Fact 164. Otto Mann, the Springfield Elementary School bus driver, was supposed to be a minor recurring character and gradually became a much larger presence through the affection of the writing staff and audience. He is a heavy metal enthusiast whose dedication to his music is sincere, even professional. He plays guitar with genuine skill. He is also comprehensively unsuitable for responsible operation of a vehicle carrying children, being either heavily medicated, sleep-deprived, or engaged in musical air instrument performance at most relevant moments. Springfield Elementary's children arrive at school most mornings, having survived a commute that a careful risk analysis would classify as an adventure. Fact 165. Miss Hoover, Lisa's second-grade teacher, is one of the show's understudied supporting characters, present consistently but rarely given the floor. Her interactions with Lisa have produced some of the show's sharpest commentary on the relationship between exceptional students and overwhelmed teachers. Miss Hoover is not incompetent. She is simply not operating in an environment that rewards the level of engagement that Lisa's presence would require. Lisa asks questions that require preparation. Miss Hoover teaches to a different level and finds Lisa's presence both flattering and exhausting. This dynamic, the brilliant student and the capable but outmatched teacher, is one the show knows, and it handles it without judgment for either party. Fact 166. Springfield Elementary has had its budget cut so many times across the show's run that the cumulative reductions represent a significant portion of what must have originally been a modest budget. The cuts have eliminated music programs, arts programs, sports programs, cafeteria upgrades, library acquisitions, and at various points, the heat. The school has received emergency funding through various improbable mechanisms, including, memorably, an oil well discovered beneath the school grounds that Burns subsequently stole. The school's persistent underfunding is one of the show's consistent political observations, presented not as a hot-button issue but as a background environmental fact. The water these children swim in, the conditions that shape their development without anyone treating it as a crisis. Fact 167. The episode in which Springfield Elementary gets a new teacher, an idealistic young educator who genuinely engages the students, raises expectations, and briefly transforms the classroom dynamic, and then inevitably leaves, is one the show has returned to several times with different specific versions of the same story. Each time, the departure of the inspiring teacher is treated as a genuine loss, and the return to baseline is treated with the resigned acceptance of a community that has learned that transformative things do not stay. This is one of the ways the show is honest about institutions. They resist transformation even when the people inside them want it. Fact 168. The Springfield Elementary School song exists and has been performed in several episodes. It is not an inspiring composition. It is the kind of institutional anthem that sounds like it was written by a committee of people who were trying to express school pride without committing to anything specific. As the children sing it with varying degrees of enthusiasm, which accurately reflects the relationship most children have with institutional pride as a concept. The song continues to be sung. The school continues to underperform. The connection between these two facts has not been examined by Springfield's school board, which has many other things to not examine. Fact 169. Nelson Muntz's famous ha-ha laugh, directed at whoever has just suffered a misfortune, has become one of the show's most recognizable single sounds. It is performed by Nancy Cartwright, who also voices Bart, and in its delivery it manages to capture something extremely specific. Not pure cruelty, but the laugh of someone who has been laughed at enough times that finding others at the bottom of the same situation provides a relief that is not entirely about taking pleasure in pain. Nelson laughs because others are down there with him. The ha-ha is the laugh of community, however unpleasant the community. Fact 170. The rivalry between Springfield Elementary and Shelbyville Elementary is one of the show's recurring institutional fixtures. Shelbyville, Springfield's neighbor and implied opposite, represents a specific kind of competitive anxiety. Springfield defines itself partly in opposition to Shelbyville. Springfield is not Shelbyville. Whatever Shelbyville has done, Springfield has done differently, probably better, and certainly first. The specifics of what makes the towns different have never been fully established, which means Shelbyville functions primarily as a mirror, a way for Springfield to see itself through the lens of how it is not. Fact 171. The school psychologist at Springfield Elementary has appeared in several episodes to evaluate students whose behavior or academic performance has drawn concern. These evaluations have, in the case of Bart, consistently concluded that he has some form of attention difficulty or learning difference. The show has never committed fully to a specific diagnosis, treating the question with a deliberate ambiguity that reflects the genuine complexity of evaluating a child whose difficulties may be rooted in boredom, in family stress, in environmental factors, or in the specific neurological wiring that makes him Bart Simpson. So the psychologist consistently recommends interventions that the family inconsistently implements and that Springfield's systems inconsistently support. Fact 172. Principal Skinner lives with his mother, Agnes, who is one of Springfield's most reliably difficult secondary characters. Agnes Skinner is demanding, critical, and consistently withholding in her approval in a way that has defined her son's emotional development as thoroughly as any other single factor. Skinner, or Tamzarian, in the truth the town has agreed not to mention, has built an entire professional identity around being a good principal, partly because the approval of his mother is not available in his personal life, and the approval of an institution is something he can at least seek. Thus, his dynamic with Bart is partly about genuine educational responsibility, and partly about the displacement behind of a need for recognition that his domestic life does not meet. Fact 173. The cafeteria at Springfield Elementary serves food that the show has depicted as nutritionally and qualitatively questionable. Lunch Lady Doris, one of the cafeteria staff who has been present throughout the show's run, handles the preparation with the affect of someone who has long since stopped asking questions about where the ingredients come from. This is not negligence. This is the institutional realism of someone who has worked in public sector food service long enough to understand that the system provides what it provides, and the job is to serve it rather than to evaluate it. Fact 174. The school's library, in various episodes, that has been depicted as significantly understocked, a consequence of budget cuts that over the years have reduced its holdings to a collection that reflects what was purchased before the cuts rather than what the students might currently need. Lisa regularly supplements her reading through the public library and through books she acquires independently, because the school library cannot meet her needs. This is not framed as a tragedy within the show. It is framed as a background fact, a consequence of fiscal choices made by people who have never been inside the library. Fact 175. In an episode that examined what Springfield Elementary would look like if its facilities were brought to a reasonable standard, an imagined future in which the school received adequate funding, the building was repaired. As the programs were restored, the results for the students were depicted as dramatically positive. Bart focused. Nelson was less aggressive. Martin was properly challenged. Lisa was happy. The episode used this vision as a brief utopian flash before returning to the status quo, making it function simultaneously as advocacy and as the kind of hopeful sadness that characterizes the show's most politically earnest moments. Fact 176. The school mascot is a Springfield Elementary. It has been various things depending on the episode, reflecting the kind of mascot continuity issues that real schools also occasionally experience. The most consistent depiction involves something moderately fierce and entirely unconnected to the school's actual history or values. A mascot chosen at some distant point in the past and maintained through institutional inertia rather than genuine commitment. This is how mascots work. This is how a lot of institutional traditions work. They are there because they were there before, and that was reason enough. Fact 177. The show has given Springfield Elementary a counterpart in the private school that some of Springfield's wealthier children attend. The private school is depicted with the details you would expect: better facilities, smaller class sizes, more attentive instruction, and a social culture that reflects the class consciousness of its student population. Thus, the contrast between public and private educational experience in Springfield is not hammered into the audience. It is simply visible in the background, in the quality of what different children receive, in the different futures those educations are likely to produce. Fact 178. Skinner's military background, the real Skinner's, which has become Tamsarian's through the lived experience of pretending long enough, informs the way he runs the school. There is a hierarchical, procedural quality to Springfield Elementary's management that reflects the command structure of military organization applied to a context that is fundamentally resistant to it. Children are not troops. Classrooms are not battalions. The application of military logic to educational administration produces some of Springfield Elementary's most specific comedy and some of its most specific dysfunction. Fact 179. In one episode, the school holds a science fair that illustrates with precision the different relationships Springfield's children have with knowledge and effort. Lisa enters with a genuine scientific investigation. Martin enters with an elaborate and technically sophisticated project. Bart enters with something that is less a scientific project than an improvisation. The results do not reward scientific quality proportionally, because science fair judging is not purely about scientific quality. It is about presentation, about the legibility of effort, about whether the judge can understand what they are looking at. Springfield's science fair is a small mirror of how knowledge is evaluated in the world generally. Fact 180. Mrs. Krabappel's relationship with Bart is the show's most complex student-teacher dynamic. They are genuine adversaries who are also, in certain moments, genuine allies. Edna Krabappel taught Bart for years in a perpetual fourth grade that neither of them could escape. She saw him clearly, not as a problem to be managed, but as a specific person with specific qualities that the educational context she operated in was not equipped to develop. She gave him that D-. She added the point. She saw that he had tried, and she rewarded the trying in a way the grade did not reflect. Bart did not thank her, but he remembered. You can tell from the episodes where they are in the same room that he remembered. Section 10. The Extended Universe. 20 facts. Springfield is a big town, bigger than it looks. It has a mob. It has a TV clown who is secretly a brilliant entertainer, wrestling with fame's costs. It has a criminal mastermind who has devoted decades to a vendetta against a 10-year-old. It has a snake who robs the Quick E-Mart and escapes so consistently that the show has made it into a recurring structure. It has Hank Scorpio, who appeared in exactly one episode and became one of the most beloved characters in the show's history. These are the last 20 facts. We are almost at the end. Springfield is quieting down. Let's go a little slower. Fact 181. Hank Scorpio appeared in one episode. Season 8, You Only Move Twice. He is Homer's boss at Globex Corporation, a visionary entrepreneur and inspiring manager. A man who runs 10 miles a day and remembers everyone's name and asks about your families and genuinely listens to the answers. He is also, as the episode gradually reveals, a global supervillain actively engaged in taking over the East Coast of the United States. The comedy of the episode is that Homer never notices this. He is having the best job experience of his life while his boss is firing a flamethrower at UN forces. Scorpio is written and voiced by Albert Brooks as a fully realized person. Charming, warm, competent, genuinely appreciative of Homer, and entirely without moral constraints when it comes to world domination. The episode ends with Homer returning to Springfield, having inadvertently helped Scorpio succeed. As a thank you gift, Scorpio gives Homer the Denver Broncos. Homer wanted the Dallas Cowboys, and he is slightly disappointed. Scorpio is still out there, presumably, running the East Coast with the same relentless positivity. Fact 182. Sideshow Bob sang the entire score of the HMS Pinafore in one episode. This was not a brief reference. It was a sustained, fully voiced performance of Gilbert and Sullivan that occupied a significant portion of the episode and demonstrated that Kelsey Grammer, who voices Bob, has the vocal range and theatrical training to deliver it. The production chose to include the performance not because it served the plot efficiently, but because it was funny and also unexpectedly beautiful, and the show has always been willing to be unexpectedly beautiful when the opportunity presents itself. Fact 183. Krusty the Clown smokes on television. In the show's universe, this has always been true. Krusty lights cigarettes on screen in front of his child audience with the casual comfort of someone who began his career in an era when this was unremarkable and simply never adjusted. He is aware that times have changed. He does not care. Krusty's relationship to his audience is genuine. He does love children, in the way that performers who built their careers on children's attention love the demographic, but it is also entirely separate from his personal behavior, which has no children-friendly aspects at all. Fact 184. Lionel Hutz, Springfield's most creatively ethical attorney, has argued cases before Springfield's legal system with a consistency of result that suggests either extreme bad luck or extreme incompetence. And the show makes clear it is the latter while somehow maintaining affection for him. Hutz promises outcomes he cannot deliver. He misunderstands law in specific, creative ways. He represents clients with confidence and loses with dignity. He was voiced by Phil Hartman, and when Hartman died in 1998, the character was retired. The show did not recast him. Some things you do not replace. Fact 185. Troy McClure, another Phil Hartman character, the washed-up actor/spokesperson who introduces himself with, "You may remember me from such films as," was one of the show's most beloved recurring presences. His catalog of fake films and infomercials, always introduced in that specific self-promoting register, was one of the show's most reliable sources of secondary comedy. The Half-Apes, Here Comes the Metric System, Dial M for Murderousness. The titles were perfect, plausible enough to be movie titles, specific enough to imply entire films. When Hartman died, McClure was retired alongside Hutz. The silence where both characters used to be is still faintly audible. Fact 186. Snake Jailbird, Springfield's recurring armed robber, recognizable by his long blonde hair and his tendency to end sentences with "dude," has been arrested, incarcerated, executed, and revived more times than the show has been able to track consistently. He is not a frightening criminal. He is more of a Springfield institution, a persistent, low-level presence that the town has absorbed into its background texture. The Quickie Mart has been robbed by Snake so many times that Apu presumably factors it into operational costs. Yet Snake is not escalating. He is also not stopping. He is in equilibrium with his criminal career, which is the most realistic depiction of petty crime the show has produced. Fact 187. Kang and Kodos, the recurring alien duo who appear primarily in Treehouse of Horror segments, have become so beloved as characters that they have crossed from the Halloween specials into occasional regular season cameos. They are from the planet Rigel 7. They speak in a specific tone of malevolent self-importance that functions as a parody of authority generally, not just alien authority. Their plans to conquer Earth are consistently foiled by either human action or their own miscalculations. Their best-known appearance is in the 1996 Halloween special, where they impersonate Bill Clinton and Bob Dole during a presidential election, with the payoff that no matter who Americans elect, an alien wins. The joke is 30 years old. It has not aged in the direction of becoming less applicable. Fact 188. Reverend Lovejoy, Timothy Lovejoy, Springfield's Protestant minister, has been the town's spiritual leader for the entirety of the show's run, presiding over a congregation that includes Ned Flanders, who is by far the most theologically engaged member, and who has gradually worn Lovejoy's pastoral enthusiasm down to a professional routine. Lovejoy's current approach to his ministry is largely administrative. He delivers sermons with the energy of someone who is fulfilling a contractual obligation. He answers Ned's theological questions with a minimalist weariness that borders on visible irritation. He is a man who went into the ministry believing and was slowly depleted by the specific quality of Ned Flanders' faith, which required more than anyone in his position was prepared to give. Fact 189. Dr. Frink, Professor John Frink Jr., Springfield's resident scientist and inventor, is a walking catalog of scientific knowledge deployed with chaotic urgency and incomplete safety protocols. He has invented devices that have temporarily solved various Springfield crises and more permanently caused others. His vocal style, a frantic, high-pitched delivery that piles qualifications onto qualifications in the manner of someone whose mind is moving faster than his mouth, was based on Jerry Lewis. His inventions are conceptually brilliant and practically volatile. Springfield has survived more Frink prototypes than is statistically justifiable. Fact 190. Chapati Bouvier's long-delayed coming out was handled by the show with a delicacy that reflected the era's expanding cultural awareness about LGBTQ+ identity. The episode in which she comes out was season 16's There's Something About Marrying, and it treated both Patty's disclosure and the community's responses with genuine attention. The episode used Springfield's legalization of same-sex marriage as its plot mechanism, a narrative choice that placed a personal story inside a broader social context. Patty remained unchanged as a character after this revelation, which was the most honest choice the show could make. The thing was always true. The episode just said it out loud. Fact 191. Bob Hope, Elizabeth Taylor, Michael Jackson, and Dustin Hoffman all appeared in The Simpsons under unusual circumstances. But Michael Jackson appeared in a Season 3 episode under a pseudonym. He played a psychiatric patient who believed he was Michael Jackson and taught Homer to write Bart a birthday song. He was credited as John J. Smith. The episode is one of the most watched in the show's history, and the identity of the voice actor was an open secret for years before being confirmed. Jackson's performance, both earnest and playful, is one of the stranger and more charming celebrity appearances in the show's history. Fact 192. The Springfield Isotopes, the town's minor league baseball team, have a history that includes a threatened move to Albuquerque that Marge and Homer uncovered and helped prevent. The episode spawned one of the stranger pieces of Simpsons merchandise, a real minor league baseball team in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the Albuquerque Isotopes, renamed themselves after the fictional Springfield team in 2003. They have been the Isotopes ever since. The show created a team to threaten to move to a city, and the city adopted the team name. art and commerce in Springfield's most elaborate crossover. Fact 193. Lurleen Lumpkin, the country singer Homer discovers and briefly manages in a Season 3 episode, is one of the show's most vividly written one-time characters. She is genuinely talented. Her songs are plaintive and specific and well-observed in the way that good country music is. She also has feelings for Homer that are sincere and uncomplicated and impossible, because Homer's feelings for Marge are comprehensive. The episode navigates the attraction without resolving it badly. Homer remains faithful, Lurleen remains dignified, and the show acknowledges that two people can recognize something real between them and choose, correctly, not to act on it. Fact 194. Sideshow Mel, a member of the Krusty the Clown Show staff who replaced Bob following Bob's arrest, wears a bone through his hair. This has never been explained. The bone exists. It is there in every appearance. It is part of Mel's character as completely as any named, explained character trait. Mel is educated, theatrical, dramatic in his delivery of every statement, regardless of the statement's significance. He arrived wearing a bone in his hair and has continued to wear it. And Springfield accepts this the way Springfield accepts most things, with the incuriosity of a community that has bigger things to not examine. Fact 195. Fat Tony's Springfield mob operation has included, across various episodes, the milk industry, the olive oil business, the waste management sector, and the pretzel industry. The mob in Springfield is not interested in violence for its own sake. It is interested in monopoly, in owning the supply chain of things people need, in placing itself between producer and consumer, and extracting rent. Fat Tony is a businessman in the most purely extractive sense of the word, operating outside legal frameworks because legal frameworks impose constraints that reduce extraction efficiency. His gentlemanly manner makes this more rather than less unsettling. Fact 196. The Babysitter Bandit, a recurring villain from early seasons who had a memorable climax involving an arrest, a chase, and the kind of resolution that early Simpsons did quickly and cleanly, represents the show's early season relationship with one-time antagonists. The show's first seasons were confident with consequence in ways that later seasons moved away from. Stories resolved. Antagonists were caught. The town was slightly different after than before. The Babysitter Bandit is a small reminder of what Springfield was like when cause and effect still applied there. Fact 197. Artie Ziff, Marge's high school boyfriend, a man of extraordinary personal insufferability and significant professional success, has appeared periodically across the show's run as both an antagonist and an unexpectedly sympathetic figure. He is a man who had Marge Bouvier in front of him and lost her through his own inability to be present, to be decent, to think about what she needed rather than what he wanted. His subsequent success in business is real. His subsequent happiness is not. He is the show's exploration of what it means to get everything you pursued after losing the thing that mattered. Fact 198. Bob Arnold, the corrupt congressman who takes bribes from the logging industry in a notable early episode, represents the show's political commentary at its most direct. He does not hide his corruption with sophistication. He accepts the bribe in his office, in his congressional seat, with an ease that suggests the transaction has happened many times before and will happen many times after. The episode uses this directness to make its point quickly and then move on. Springfield's relationship with political corruption is not one of shock. It is one of familiarity. Fact 199. That the Van Houten family, Milhouse's parents, Kirk and Luann, are one of Springfield's most elaborately realized secondary family units. Their divorce, their reunion, their dynamic as co-parents, their individual attempts at romantic lives, and their eventual reconciliation are tracked across multiple seasons with a consistency that reflects genuine writer investment. Kirk's post-divorce apartment, his failed attempts at bachelor life, his song, Can I Borrow a Feeling? Each detail contributes to a portrait of a man whose life organized itself around a family and who does not know how to be himself without that structure. Luann is given fewer scenes but is consistently depicted as someone who needed more than Kirk could give and who found it difficult to ask directly for what she needed. They are a marriage. And the show has treated their marriage as a real thing, messy and specific and worth following. Fact 200. The 200th fact is this: Springfield is still there. After 36 years, after 788 episodes, after every disaster and reset and revelation and cover-up and prophecy and violation and tender moment and terrible meal and impossible injury and cold beer and blue-haired morning and saxophone note carried through an open window at dusk, Springfield is still there. The lights are on. The plant is running. The quick E-Mart is open. Mo is behind the bar. The school is in session. Bart's desk is occupied. Lisa's chair is pushed slightly forward the way it always is when she's paying attention. Maggie is watching. Homer is dreaming or stumbling, or laughing at something that isn't funny and making it funny, or sitting on the couch with his family full of donuts and love and a deep animal peace, not asking too many questions about why the fish have 3 eyes. And somewhere across the fence, Ned Flanders is maintaining his lawn in the golden hour, moving back and forth with a steady patience, humming something low and thankful, giving his quiet attention to the things that are still green. Springfield is still there, and it will be there tomorrow, and the day after that, as long as we keep watching, as long as we keep going back. Evergreen Terrace, Sunday night. The couch is warm. You're home.